Chapter 349. The secular world was like a sea of bitterness. But there were always a few lucky people. Even in the secular world where all living things were bitter, they were still the darling of fate. For Wang Yuetong, her life should not have the so-called sorrow and pressure. As the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai and a genius with wind vein, she might not be as dazzling as her brother Wang Xingxiao's wind and thunder veins, heavenly king heart and exquisite bone, but a wind vein was worth cultivating in any superpower. However, no one in the Wang family of Beihai had ever strictly supervised and sharpened her martial arts. Whether it was Wang Tianzong or summer solstice, they had never made any clear requirements for her from childhood to adulthood. Happiness had been running through her childhood and girlhood, sweet as a dream. This was a life where she didn't need to worry about anything or struggle for any fantasy. She also practiced martial arts, but she never paid attention to it. 3 years ago, she was at the peak of the ice-condensing realm, and now she still hadn't entered the fire-flaming realm. Wang Yuetong also had some contact with the operation of commercial investment capital. Her sister-in-law, who was internally determined to be the future hostess of the Wang family of Beihai since she was born, was a real genius in this regard. When some famous economists, professors, business tycoons, and financial tycoons taught that sister-in-law, she listened in a lot. The Wang family of Beihai was unrivaled in the field of biological gene technology. There were all kinds of gene potions for different purposes. Wang Yuetong also studied them and used some extremely precious raw materials to make a batch of invaluable facial masks. In addition, Wang Yuetong also learned a little bit of bel canto, ballet, piano, guitar, guzheng, painting, and calligraphy. She could be said to be a real all-rounder, knowing everything but proficient in none. From childhood to adulthood, she did whatever she wanted to do, and no one forced her to do it if she didn't want to do it. Because her life was destined not to have too many ups and downs. Her future was stable, happy, and free. It was noble and elegant, calm and luxurious, dinner and champagne, sweet and leisurely. Her life would not have ups and downs and difficult setbacks, so it was good to be casual. Because of this, the entanglement between Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan was regarded by the whole Wang family of Beihai as Wang Yuetong's self-abandonment. Abandoning oneself to degeneration. Wang Yuetong did not deny this statement, but she had never regretted it. She always felt that a woman's life was only complete when she met a man who made her have the courage to fly into the fire like a moth. He had fallen and fallen. Even if he really became an inseparable and chaotic relationship in the future and became a karmic obstacle entangled with gratitude and grudges, there was nothing to regret. At least Wang Yuetong didn't regret it. It was rainy on July 22nd in Huading. The rain continued to fall from dawn to dusk. The rain continued to fall without any signs of stopping. Wang Yuetong silently walked out of the study and gently closed the door. In the study, Li Tianlan sat in a chair, still sleeping quietly. Li Tianlan had slept for nearly 48 hours since he came back from Linhan, but there was still no sign of him waking up. His breathing was steady and regular, as if he had fallen into the deepest sleep. Wang Yuetong hesitated several times and finally did not wake him up. This was the 5th time she had entered the study. Li Tianlan did not wake up, so she could only continue to wait. Waiting. From the moment she made up her mind to be with Li Tianlan, she knew that this was something she had to get used to in the future. The TV was on in the hall on the 1st floor. Wang Yuetong held the railing and looked down. On the wide sofa, Dongqing Rushi's body was curled up, looking lonely. Wang Yuetong frowned and looked a little hesitant. Li Tianlan had been back for 2 days. Dongqing Rushi naturally lived here. Neither of them woke Li Tianlan up, nor did they say a word to each other. Wang Yuetong stayed in her room most of the time. Dongqing Rushi was really free. She meditated, cooked, ran in the morning, and watched TV. Nothing was delayed. It seemed that they could not stand the atmosphere here. Yu Donglai and Lin Yuxian were rarely at home. One went out to visit friends, and the other went out to play. They left for nearly 2 days and did not come back until noon. At this time, no one knew where they were. Wang Yuetong hesitated whether to talk to Dongqing Rushi or not. She didn't even know what to talk about. She just felt that it was very wrong. Dongqing Rushi might be able to deal with such an awkward atmosphere calmly, but she couldn't. Otherwise, she would not have locked herself in the room for 2 days in a row with an attitude close to concession. Wang Yuetong narrowed her eyes and quietly looked at Dongqing Rushi on the sofa downstairs. Dongqing Rushi on the sofa seemed to feel the hostile eyes, so she raised her head. One was up and the other was down, 6 floors high, but they were still clear in each other's eyes. Wang Yuetong took a deep breath, turned to the elevator, and planned to go downstairs. The phone suddenly rang. Wang Yuetong looked at the caller ID, and her face suddenly changed. The phone was still ringing. On the screen, the word "daddy" seemed to have suddenly become extremely sharp, easily piercing through all her defenses. Wang Yuetong's hand holding the phone trembled a little. She pressed the answer button and gently said hello. "Yuetong, where are you?" On the phone, Wang Tianzong's voice was clear and calm, without any extra emotion. "In Huading." Wang Yuetong bit her lip and whispered. During the 3 years when Li Tianlan left, the relationship between her and Wang Tianzong was extremely stiff. They didn't even talk on the phone a few times a year. Wang Tianzong had a headache about his daughter's degeneration, while Wang Yuetong continued to insist in silence. If Li Tianlan didn't appear, the relationship between father and daughter would always be stiff. "East Emperor Palace?" Wang Tianzong asked. Wang Yuetong's face was a little pale, but she didn't say a word. On the phone, Wang Tianzong seemed to sigh softly. "Don't you go back to Yuzhou? Your Uncle Yi called me several times and said that you asked for 10 days leave, but you haven't gone back yet." "Dad, I want to resign." Wang Yuetong held the phone and said very carefully but firmly. "Resign?" Wang Tianzong thought for a while and said blandly, "If you resign, what can you do?" Wang Yuetong fell silent again. She knew what she was doing, but she didn't know how to say it. She believed that her father on the other end of the phone could understand what she meant. Wang Tianzong was also silent. On both ends of the phone, between father and daughter, all the emotions seemed to be completely frozen for a moment. "Go home." After a long time, Wang Tianzong said blandly, "I won't go back." Wang Yuetong suddenly laughed. Her voice was very clear, with the lightness and cleverness that Wang Tianzong was familiar with, but there was a trace of persistence in it. "Dad, I want to stay in East Emperor Palace and stay with him." "He's an enemy." Wang Tianzong's tone was simple and straightforward. "But he's not my enemy. For me, he's my man." Wang Yuetong said softly. "Have you really made up your mind?" Wang Tianzong said calmly, "Do you really want to go all the way?" "This is not a decision." Wang Yuetong said softly, "I just respect my own feelings." "Dad, I'm not angry with you by saying this. I can be sure that I really love him. Maybe in your eyes, I haven't been with him for a long time. But since love at first sight can happen, it's not difficult to understand that I love him. I believe that he's a man worthy of all my feelings. It doesn't matter who he is to the Wang family of Beihai, an enemy, a friend, or a stranger. Dad, I'm just a little girl spoiled by you. I haven't done anything for the family, and I haven't thought about anything for the family. It's the same now. Whether he's an enemy or a friend of the family, I love him. I can't turn back, and I don't want to turn back. Even if you put aside your standpoint, he may not be suitable for you." Wang Tianzong said calmly, "You can hand over your whole life, but Li Tianlan's life is destined to be more than love. Do you remember my evaluation of Li Tianlan when I first met him?" Wang Yuetong's eyes were a little dazed. She remembered the meeting between Li Tianlan and her father in Huading. At that time, she actually didn't know her father's evaluation of Li Tianlan. Wang Xingxiao conveyed the evaluation to her afterward. Only 8 words. "A wolf's ambition was never a good match." I probably know something about the Li family's situation over the years, so I can guess Li Tianlan's psychology. Apart from potential, he had nothing else. That was why he wanted so much. Power, wealth, status, women, he wants everything. What kind of woman is Qin Weibai? It's no exaggeration to say that if I were 10 years younger, even I would be tempted. Of course, I would just be tempted, and I wouldn't really do anything. No matter who gets such a woman, he should be satisfied. But Li Tianlan is not satisfied. He still wants you, wants Dongqing Rushi. I can be sure that he will have more than 3 or 5 women in the future. You may have a place in his heart, but you will never be the most important. You will always be just one of his many women. You love him, but does he love you? He may have real feelings for 1 or 2 women, but with Qin Weibai, you don't have a big chance. Let's make a bet. You take the phone to Li Tianlan now. As long as I hear Li Tianlan say sincerely that he loves my daughter, I will not oppose your relationship in the future. How about that? Wang Tianzong was surprisingly talkative. In recent years, Zhongzhou Sword Emperor had become more and more reticent. It could be seen that he was really worried about Wang Yuetong. Wang Yuetong bit her lip and felt a little wronged, but she did not agree to bet with her father. She held the phone tightly and forced herself to calm down. Dad, I've decided. I'm sorry. Wang Tianzong suddenly fell silent. After a long time, when Wang Yuetong was about to hang up the phone, 3 words came from the phone. Go home. Wang Tianzong said and hung up the phone directly. Wang Yuetong burst into tears in an instant. Go home. Wang Tianzong said these 3 words twice. But the meaning was completely different. Wang Yuetong wiped her tears, and her eyes became firm again. She turned into the elevator and went downstairs. In the hall on the first floor, Dongqing Rushi was still sitting on the sofa, watching Tom and Jerry, which was very childish for adults. She held the remote control in her hand and smiled quietly. Yu Donglai and Lin Yu were sitting in a remote corner of the hall, playing chess. The moment Wang Yuetong came out, both of them focused on her at the same time. Wang Yuetong's eyes were slightly red, but she looked very calm. She didn't know until the moment Wang Tianzong hung up the phone. Just as she had just braced herself to answer her father's call. There were some things, no matter how reluctant she was, she had to face them. She took a deep breath, walked directly to Dongqing Rushi, reached out her hand, and said blandly, "Give it to me." Chapter 350. The war between women could never be as brutal as the men's fists, but the forms that were displayed were more colorful. There were verbal battles on different occasions, open and covert attacks from every corner, sarcasm and ridicule without batting an eyelid, 2 extremely beautiful young women from extraordinary family backgrounds. Even if they were to pull each other's hair or ears, it would still be a rare sight to see. This was King lively. Otherwise, why would the ratings of some palace dramas in recent years far exceed those of war dramas? Those rising ratings were not all contributed by sisters, aunts, and aunts. No, young men also loved it. Lin Yuxian was such a man. He liked lively scenes. At present, the battle between Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong seemed to have just begun, but it was enough to make him excited. He sat in the corner of the hall with Yu Donglai and was too lazy to play chess for a while. He looked around and found that there were no snacks around, so he casually lit a cigarette and looked at Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong who were confronting each other. He gloated and muttered to himself, "No, no, no." Yu Donglai shook his head helplessly. The old man was old and had little interest in watching lively scenes. He had already wondered if he should go upstairs and take out Li Tianlan, who had slept for 2 days. The silent confrontation in front of the TV continued. Wang Yuetong kept reaching out and became calmer. "Give it to me." Dongqing Rushi looked up at Wang Yuetong. Her eyes were as clear as water, and her small hand subconsciously clenched the remote control in her hand. Wang Yuetong did not urge her. She just reached out and waited quietly. But no one doubted that she would be savage when she was impatient. She was now just a young expert who had not yet entered the fire-flaming realm. In the face of Dongqing Rushi of the thunder-shocking realm, there was a huge gap in their combat strength. But as two women who had the same man, the martial arts realm was actually nothing. Dongqing Rushi hesitated, pursed her lips, and handed the remote control to Wang Yuetong. Her expression was neither aggrieved nor angry. She just looked at her quietly. Wang Yuetong took the remote control with many buttons and aimed it at the TV. Although it was called a television, it was actually a giant screen that was almost beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Its specifications were almost equivalent to the sum of two giant screens in a movie theater. The screen occupied the entire front wall of the hall, and it was so domineering that it was almost exaggerated. It was installed here by Wang Yuetong herself 3 years ago. It was installed according to the specifications of the Beihai Province Police Department Command Center. All the functions were available, and the TV broadcast function was just the tip of the iceberg. Wang Yuetong pressed several buttons. The image of the cat and mouse that occupied the entire wall began to shrink. The huge screen might look very comfortable, but it was hard for the eyes to accept after a long time. Wang Yuetong adjusted the picture to a more comfortable size, handed the remote control back to Dongqing Rushi and asked, "Is it much better now?" Dongqing Rushi took the remote control in a daze and said obediently, "Thank you. Tianlan should wake up in the evening. I plan to cook dinner for him. Let's go grocery shopping together." Wang Yuetong continued to speak in a lukewarm tone, without kindness or malice. "Sure." Dongqing Rushi sat on the sofa and seemed to instinctively make a defensive posture, wrapping her hands around her slender and straight legs. "I want Tianlan to accompany me tonight." Wang Yuetong looked down at Dongqing Rushi. Silence. Either she broke out in silence, or she would die in silence. Dongqing Rushi did not break out. She silently held her legs, looking like a doormat. "Oh," she said, lowering her head. Wang Yuetong's eyes flickered, and her tone softened unconsciously. "I heard that you and Tianlan were born on the same day, the same month, and the same year?" For Dongqing Rushi, this was something to be happy about. She looked a little happy, and her face bloomed with a smile. But Wang Yuetong did not make her happy for long. "Then I'm older than you. You have to call me sister from now on." Dongqing Rushi's happy little face froze, and she looked at Wang Yuetong quietly. "And I've slept with him. I'm the sister in every way." Wang Yuetong looked straight into Dongqing Rushi's eyes. "Sister." After a long time, Dongqing Rushi whispered, then turned her head, and her mouth seemed to pout subconsciously. Wang Yuetong nodded. "I'm going to change clothes. Let's go shopping together." She turned around and walked into the elevator. Was it over? Was it over? Lin Yuxian, who was still waiting to see a good show, was stunned. There was no quarrel, no abuse, and no fight. One was majestic and strong, and the other was pitiful and resigned. Sister and sister. Were they going to love each other? Lin Yuxian, who was watching, said that he could not accept it. It was absolutely unacceptable. Dongqing Rushi didn't look like the kind of person who would be killed in a second. What's going on? Lin Yuxian looked depressed and annoyed. Good thing. Yu Donglai smiled and fiddled with the chessboard. Boy, do you still want to play? You're going to lose this game. It's really a good thing. Lin Yuxian nodded. But I still have to ask. He hesitated, ignoring Yu Donglai's stare, and walked over with a low smile. Dongqing Rushi was still nestled on the sofa, watching Tom and Jerry, which had shrunk down and was very comfortable. Her eyes were clear, and she seemed to forget the grievances just now. The corners of her mouth were slightly bent, as if she was smiling. Lin Yuxian came over and sat on the sofa on the other side. He looked at Dongqing Rushi and smiled bitterly. Well. He took the initiative to speak. Dongqing Rushi turned to look at him. I can't stand it. Lin Yuxian patted his thigh and felt bitter. She was indeed a bitch, and she was playing with fire here. Why do you call her sister? He meant it. Dongqing Rushi was Li Tianlan's fiancée, which was fully recognized by both families. However, Qin Weibai beat her to it. She had to call her sister. No one would feel ashamed if she lost to Qin Weibai. Now there was Wang Yuetong, and she was also a sister. How aggrieved she felt. She couldn't stand it. You don't like her? Dongqing Rushi looked at Lin Yuxian and asked. It's not about whether I like her or not. This is your family affair. Although the Lin clan and the Wang family of Beihai have a deep relationship, the Lin clan's position is clear now. I'm not familiar with Yuetong. I haven't even met her before, but I've met her brother once. So if you really want to say who is partial, I will definitely support you. She should call you sister. Lin Yuxian said helplessly. Whatever. Dongqing Rushi was indifferent, without the slightest anger. Don't you feel aggrieved? Lin Yuxian looked curious. Not really. Dongqing Rushi thought for a moment and said softly, Tianlan should be happy in this way. Lin Yuxian was stunned and didn't know what to say for a while. Wang Yuetong, who had always ignored Dongqing Rushi, took the initiative to speak. Dongqing Rushi obediently called her sister. There was no doubt that the two women wanted to make their men happy. Lin Yuxian suddenly lost interest in watching the fun. He suddenly felt a little envious. He envied Li Tianlan's luck. Dongqing Rushi sat cross-legged and straightened her body, holding a pillow. She stared at the screen in front of her seriously, but her eyes were not focused. She thought of a lot of things. She thought of Li Tianlan, whom she had heard since she was a child. Li Tianlan, who lived in the depths of her heart and could not be more perfect. Everyone was emphasizing the identity of the fiancé. Grandpa said that he was destined to be a great man in the future, like the current Wang Tianzong, or even like the amazing ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai. Her father said that the Dongqing clan owed him too much. In her memory, it seemed that only her mother had said something different. Her mother said that she would be Li Tianlan's wife in the future, so she owed him. She just hoped that when they were together in the future, she would not forget that the man who became her husband had borne a lot of things that she should have borne. Or responsibilities. Yuzhou. The building of the army headquarters. When Dongqing Wudi, the standing minister of the army headquarters, slammed the documents in his hand on his desk, Lieutenant General Bai Qingzhao, the Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters, was sitting opposite him and drinking tea with a smile. Bai Qingzhao was one of the backbone generals of the giant group, the eldest son of Bai Zhanfang, the patriarch of the Bai family, Bai Qingxian's biological brother, and Dongqing Wudi's brother-in-law. He was originally the deputy commander of the Central Theater of Operations. 2 years ago, after Dongqing Wudi entered the army headquarters from the Border Control Corps, the giant group almost used all its resources to transfer Bai Qingzhao to the post of Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters. The deputy commander of the Theater of Operations and the Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters seemed to be similar. It could only be regarded as a small promotion, but the actual meaning was very different. The president of Zhongzhou State was also the minister of the army headquarters, but he rarely interfered with the daily work of the army headquarters. The daily work of the army headquarters was presided over by the standing minister. In the army headquarters, the role that could check and balance the standing minister was not the 2 deputy ministers, but the secretary general who did not have the rank of marshal. So 2 years ago, even though Qi Beizong, the flag bearer of the Special Warfare Group, retired from the position of standing minister, the secretary general was still in office. The strength of the Special Warfare Group still did not suffer too much. Instead, it gained a lot of benefits out of thin air with Qi Beizong's retirement. Dongqing Wudi controlled the army headquarters. After 1 term, he was bound to replace the secretary general with his own people. This was the beginning of Dongqing Wudi establishing his authority in the army. Bai Qingzhao was the only candidate for the secretary general. It could be said that he was one of Dongqing Wudi's most trustworthy people. What's wrong? Bai Qingzhao glanced at the documents that Dongqing Wudi threw on the table, picked them up casually, and said with a smile. See for yourself. Dongqing Wudi gritted his teeth, and with a gloomy and angry expression, he shouted, shameless. A bunch of bastards. Dongqing Wudi rarely completely lost his composure. Even in front of Bai Qingzhao, who could be absolutely trusted, it was a little out of line for him to behave like this. Bai Qingzhao raised his eyebrows and calmly glanced at the documents that Dongqing Wudi threw on the table. The documents were delivered by Dongqing Wudi's secretary a few minutes ago. At first, both sides didn't take it seriously. Who knew that Dongqing Wudi just glanced at them and directly exploded? Bai Qingzhao had no idea that something big would happen in the military that made Dongqing Wudi lose his composure like this. The document was very thin. Including the cover, there were only 4 or 5 pages. Bai Qingzhao glanced at the cover and subconsciously narrowed his eyes. On the cover was a pale golden city, built between 2 snow-capped peaks, majestic and heavy. This was the emblem of Kunlun City. In other words, this was a document from Kunlun City? Bai Qingzhao seemed to think of something and directly opened the document. He glanced at it in a hurry, and his expression suddenly changed. The content of the document was not complicated, and it could even be said to be clear at a glance. It was about the maneuver of the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy at the end of the month. Kunlun City officially approved the maneuver applications of the 2 academies. At the same time, it verified the maneuver rules of the 2 academies and the sequence of the maneuver. At the end of the document were the seals of Kunlun City, the President's office, and the cabinet. This showed that both the President and the Prime Minister had approved this document. You've gone too far. Bai Qingzhao gritted his teeth and suppressed his anger in his tone. Dongqing Wudi calmed down instead. He took the document again and glanced at it carefully. Then he threw it on the table with cold eyes. What do you think? Bai Qingzhao was silent for a while and asked in a deep voice. Dongqing Wudi shook his head with a sneer. Tianlan grows up too fast. The Li family's comeback also makes some people unable to sit still. So they can't help but be ruthless and make such a maneuver rules. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai really have a tacit understanding. Is there still room for maneuver? Bai Qingzhao asked in a low voice. As soon as he spoke, he shook his head first and smiled bitterly. If there was really room for maneuver, how could Dongqing Wudi lose his composure like this? No matter what they plan in private, at least they do it in line with the rules. Dongqing Wudi said. The President, Bai Qingzhao, hesitated. He can't wait for Kunlun City to do this. Dongqing Wudi sneered and was a little unhappy. The academics can take advantage of this opportunity to get closer to them. What Kunlun City did was in line with the rules, but it broke them. In this situation, if I want to do something, I can only ignore the rules. The giant group is not powerful enough, so it must ask for help from the academics. This kind of thing can only be good for the academics. Besides, they didn't do it, so we don't hate them. The academics will push the boat with the current. Of course, the President will agree. Bai Qingzhao was silent. What are you going to do? After a long time, he asked slowly. Do I have a choice? Dongqing Wudi said calmly, in this situation, I can only take one step at a time. Kunlun City broke the rules, so I can only be lawless for once. Otherwise, what can I do? He glanced at Bai Qingzhao and smiled bitterly. If he really did nothing this time, then the Bai family and the Dongqing clan might really break up completely. Fortunately, we're not completely unprepared. Wan Tian has gone to the Eastern Theater of Operations. Isn't this what we're guarding against Kunlun City? Dongqing Wudi said softly. In this case, the Border Control Corps really can't be saved. Bai Qingzhao frowned. There's always a deal. Dongqing Wudi took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. Then he calmly picked up his mobile phone and dialed a number. The phone was quickly connected, and a low voice sounded on the other end of the line. Ziyuan, this is Dongqing Wudi. How's the scenery in Tiannan? Dongqing Wudi laughed. He didn't call Wang Wandian, the current commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations, but Ning Ziyuan, the former commander. The Dongqing clan had prepared for all of this long before the Yuzhou conference began. Ning Ziyuan was transferred to Tiannan. Wang Wantian was transferred to the Eastern Theater of Operations. It was all part of the preparation. So now Dongqing Wudi was angry, but he didn't panic. The so-called game, no matter how complicated it was nothing more than dealing with every move. Chapter 351. Second update, the night rain was still falling. When Li Tianlan opened his eyes, the study was dark and quiet. The rain outside hit the glass messily, and the sound was particularly clear. He stood up and moved his body. He poured himself a glass of warm water and drank it. He suddenly became energetic. The phone on the desk seemed to have been touched. Li Tianlan opened the phone and looked at it. There were no text messages or missed calls. He shook his head hard, lit a cigarette, and opened the window casually. The rain was getting heavier. The rain fell on the lake, and the ripples on the lake continued to spread in the night. The treetops swayed gently in the wind. The light in the courtyard of East Emperor Palace was hazy, with dense water vapor. It was obviously a brilliant summer, but the scene was a little bleak and lonely. Li Tianlan looked at the rain outside the window quietly, and the light in his eyes became more and more calm. Today, his martial arts had reached the basic level, and he stood at the peak that he had never reached under normal conditions. But the peak was not perfect. This imperfection was not because he advanced too fast, nor because his body was too fragile, but because his strength and will were out of balance. In 3 years, he went all the way to the north, through mountains, rivers, seas, polar glaciers, grasslands, deserts, wind, frost, rain, and snow. He almost never stopped. His martial arts was like his road to the north, which was walked step by step in silence. It was extremely solid and stable, and the accumulated sword intent was absolutely pure. His body could bear such difficult training, but his will could not bear the wind, frost, and loneliness of these 3 years. Now, even if he returned to Huading from the polar region, it was difficult for him to make up for his essence, qi, and spirit in a short time. The imbalance between will and strength meant that he had strength but not enough concentration. Without a will as firm as steel, it was difficult for his sword intent to reach the real purity and peak. The only way Li Tianlan could think of now was to sleep. Only with sufficient and comfortable rest could he gradually adjust his spirit, qi, and spirit back to normal. Li Tianlan looked out of the window, and for a moment, his mind was wandering. His essence, qi, and spirit were damaged, but he did not need to worry about recovery because of his previous foundation. So at this moment, he thought more of the year in the desert. That year, he fell from a high place to a low valley. He abandoned his cultivation of the thunder-shocking realm and started over again. That year, he had crawled in the dark, narrow, and silent labyrinth below the desert prison, where he could only hear his own heartbeat. He had experienced countless times of despair, depression, fear, and madness. Only then did he develop an absolute will that was comparable to the heavenly king heart. Without the experiences of that year, with his original willpower, it would have been impossible for him to have survived those 3 years of destruction. Everything seemed like a coincidence, but it also seemed like an inevitability. He remembered the first words the 2 metaphysical grandmasters said to him when he first met Xian Xuanzi and Great Master Wu Wei. Trust in heaven's will. The mandate of heaven was right before their eyes. Even if they did not believe it, they could not disrespect it. The door of the study was gently pushed open from the outside. Wang Yuetong came in and looked at Li Tianlan, who was smoking silently. She said softly, "You're awake?" Li Tianlan nodded and said, "I am hungry. The food Rushi and I cooked may not be as good as Senior Yu's. Would you like to try it?" Wang Yuetong said with a smile. Her voice was soft and her eyes were enchanting. After turning from a girl to a woman, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai was not stingy with her charm in front of Li Tianlan. She really wanted to quietly bloom beside Li Tianlan for a lifetime. "You and Rushi?" Li Tianlan threw the cigarette but out of the window with a strange look in his eyes. "I've made a deal with her." Wang Yuetong nodded and said, "She will call me sister in the future." Li Tianlan suddenly had nothing to say. Even if he was an immortal, he could not figure out why Dongqing Rushi called Wang Yuetong sister in a short time. Of course, I'm destined not to be compared with Sister Little Bai. Even if Dongqing Rushi calls me sister, she won't like me in her heart, and I won't like her either. But we will inevitably meet in the future. We will be by your side in the future. We can't pretend not to know each other for the rest of our lives. That would be too embarrassing. Wang Yuetong came over and hugged Li Tianlan, leaning in his arms and whispering. In the future? Li Tianlan said subconsciously and gently stroked her short hair with his palm. Yes, in the future. Wang Yuetong nodded and said in a firm tone, Tianlan, I'll resign. I'll stay by your side from now on. Li Tianlan paused for a while and then said, okay. Wang Yuetong laughed in his arms. She rubbed against Li Tianlan and whispered, when you were sleeping, my dad called me. He wanted me to go home. What did you say? Li Tianlan was silent for a while and then asked slowly. I said I won't go back. Wang Yuetong was in a daze. Thinking about the phone call, she said in a complicated tone, so my dad asked me to go home. Li Tianlan held Wang Yuetong tightly and did not speak. Go home. Go home. It seemed to have similar meanings, but the meaning was completely different. The former meant that she would not come back after going home. The latter meant that she would not go back again after going home. At least she would not go back before there was a clear result between Li Tianlan and the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan lowered his head and kissed Wang Yuetong's hair gently. The former little princess trembled slightly in his arms. Do you regret it? Li Tianlan whispered. As long as you don't abandon me in the future, I won't regret it. Wang Yuetong's voice was very soft, almost like a whisper. After all, she was a woman who was so extravagant that she would rather gamble with her life. She would be perturbed, uneasy, confused, and at a loss for such a gamble. As for whether she would regret it or not, it all depended on the man she chose in the end. This responsibility was so heavy that it was clearer than that of the Li family, which was close at hand but far at the same time. Don't worry. Li Tianlan paused and then said, thank you. Wang Yuetong smiled, raised her head, and reached out to touch Li Tianlan's face. She whispered, when I come back, I will not be the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, but your woman. Li Tianlan patted her on the back and whispered, when are you leaving? After dinner. Wang Yuetong whispered, take me to the airport. Li Tianlan nodded and said, okay. I want you to carry me downstairs. Wang Yuetong stepped back from Li Tianlan and opened her arms. Li Tianlan smiled, picked her up, and went downstairs. Everyone downstairs was there. Lin Yuxian and Yu Donglai sat at the dinner table. Dongqing Rushi was serving rice. The meal was very sumptuous. But because of the relationship between Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong, the dinner was neither salty nor plain. Li Tianlan had a good appetite. For him, as long as the two women did not fight on the spot, there would be a relatively harmonious day in the future. After dinner, Li Tianlan drove Wang Yuetong to the airport. Wang Yuetong booked a ticket on the way and changed her boarding pass at the airport. Li Tianlan watched Wang Yuetong pass the security check. Wang Yuetong did not say much from beginning to end. She just hugged Li Tianlan hard before leaving and whispered, wait for me to come back. Her figure passed the security check and gradually disappeared at the end of the passage. Li Tianlan pulled his collar and turned to leave the airport. When the black Audi left along the road, a group of dignified and calm Mercedes-Benz cars slowly entered the airport and passed by Li Tianlan. The night rain was getting heavier and heavier, and the thunder was looming high in the sky. In the airport near midnight, two middle-aged men walked out of the airport steadily with a beautiful girl. 6 Mercedes-Benz cars were parked on the road outside the airport. Nearly 20 burly men in uniform black suits stood silently in the rain at night. The moment the 2 men and a woman walked out of the airport in silence, everyone bowed at the same time. Welcome, Your Highness. The 2 middle-aged men got on the Mercedes-Benz at the front. The beautiful girl got on the other car. The motorcade slowly left the airport. In the Mercedes-Benz at the front, Gu Xingyun, who had arrived in Huading one day earlier, looked pale and weak. He lowered the window, lit a cigarette, and coughed softly. Gu Qianxuan, who had been with him all the time, received a text message. He took out his mobile phone and looked at it. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and he said calmly, "The cabinet and the office of the president have agreed on the rules of the maneuver of the two academies." As expected. Gu Xingyun smiled. This is all within the scope of the rules. Rules and rules are often different things, but sometimes they are the same thing. In the special warfare system, no matter what, Kunlun City has the final say. This is both a rule and a rule. What about the giant group? Gu Qianxuan frowned and glanced at Gu Xingyun. Now he had confirmed Gu Xingyun's injury. Even Gu Xingyun was almost completely disabled by the blow of the murderous weapon, and his combat capability was greatly reduced. It was impossible for him to recover without a few years. Even if he had time, it would depend on his own luck. If the maneuver of the two academies had not been too important and related to the face of Kunlun City, Gu Xingyun would not have come in person. Now the power of Kunlun City was really in the hands of Gu Qianxuan, and the relationship between him and Gu Xingyun seemed to have eased a lot. The maneuver of the two academies is a big event. No one can destroy it. Otherwise, it is really breaking and trampling on the rules. What else can Dongqing Wudi do unless he wants to commit political suicide? Gu Xingyun coughed and said in a flat tone. I'm afraid that there will be an accident. Gu Qianxuan said calmly, how can the madman of the Dongqing clan be rational when he is crazy? That's true. Gu Xingyun nodded. But the question is it worth it for Li Tianlan? He glanced at Gu Qianxuan and continued, and even if there is an accident, you are there. If an accident really happens, you will personally kill Li Tianlan in the maneuver. He paused and said gloomily, at any cost. Gu Qianxuan narrowed his eyes, nodded, and said, where are we going? The Sky Academy? To Winter Mountain. Gu Xingyun shook his head. I have an appointment with an expert. Maybe he can give us some advice about the future situation. Gu Qianxuan nodded with a smile, but he curled his lips calmly. What kind of so-called expert are you thinking? Bullshit. Isn't it your cheap father-in-law, Xian Xuanzi? Chapter 352. When it was almost dawn, it finally turned into heavy rain after a whole day. The rolling thunder roared wantonly in the sky. It was windy in Huading. The rain became heavier and heavier, and finally became a rainstorm that was extremely rare in Huading. The rainstorm engulfed the whole city. In the dim lights, the crazy rain seemed to be the only sound in the whole city. In the pouring rain, a white-haired Xian Xuanzi, wearing a light blue Daoist robe, holding a horsetail whisk in one hand and an umbrella in the other, walked quietly on the road to the top of Mount Dong. Mount Dong was known as the back garden of the whole Huading. There were many mansions and scenic spots, so the road was extremely smooth. However, it was a rainy day and it was late at night. The smooth mountain road was still slippery. Xian Xuanzi walked very slowly, but his footsteps were extremely firm. It was raining heavily. In a blue Daoist robe and a black umbrella, he walked alone in the dark night because of the heavy rain. His figure was like an inconspicuous black spot. There were many mansions on Mount Dong. However, Xian Xuanzi did not go to any mansion, but went straight to the top of the mountain. The mountain road looked more and more serene in the heavy rain. The top of the mountain looked distant and cold. Xian Xuanzi walked forward unhurriedly. He did not walk fast, but his pace was the same and never slowed down. The top of the mountain lit up with a vague and hazy light in the heavy rain. The light illuminated a small ancient and solemn building. Xian Xuanzi's calm face looked a little weird in the night. He knew what the building was illuminated by the light. The building with a history of hundreds of years could be regarded as the holy land of the southeast coast for some people with faith. Xian Xuanzi also had faith. But he believed in the three pure ones. And the top of the mountain, it was a church. The most famous Zhongshan Cathedral on the top of Mount Dong. The place illuminated by the light was the destination of Xian Xuanzi's trip. Xian Xuanzi walked closer and closer. The light swayed in the wind and rain, illuminating the bell tower of the church in the heavy rain. Xian Xuanzi stood calmly in front of the church. The European-style church, the sage-like Taoist priest, the black umbrella in the rain, and the light on the bell tower. The rain poured down, and the wind blew past. In the darkness of the night, this scene looked strange yet harmonious. Xian Xuanzi took a deep breath, pushed open the half-closed door, and walked in. He put the black umbrella at the door casually, and the water stains soaked the ground that had not been hit by the rain. The space inside the bell tower was very small. The cross was placed in the center of the bell tower. The lights in the bell tower were on, illuminating everything inside. Xian Xuanzi entered the church and the bell tower. The white horsetail whisk hung in his hands, and his Daoist robe was neat and tidy. As he stood in the bell tower, the atmosphere became increasingly strange. But what was even stranger was that there wasn't a Taoist priest in this Catholic church. In front of the cross, there was even a monk dressed in a monk's robe. Bald head, Buddhist beads, monk robes, all these were even more conspicuous than Xian Xuanzi's outfit. The two of them stared at each other across the cross. The scene was incongruous to the extreme. It's been 3 years, but the Heavenly King's demeanor is still the same as before. Congratulations. The monk looked at Xian Xuanzi with a meaningful smile, without the tranquility and peace of a monk. Xian Xuanzi suddenly raised his eyebrows. Heavenly King. That was how Xian Xuanzi addressed him, not as a Taoist priest. In terms of seniority, he was of the same generation as Xian Xuanzi's master. In this situation, although Buddhism and Taoism were different, Xian Xuanzi deserved to be called martial uncle. But Xian Xuanzi called him Heavenly King. He was indeed a Heavenly King now, the 13th Heavenly King of Samsara Palace that few people knew. Your master and I are of the same generation. Xian Xuanzi narrowed his eyes and said indifferently. My master is gone, so you are no longer an elder. Is it wrong for me to call you Heavenly King? The monk's eyes were sharp, with clear aggression. Yes. Xian Xuanzi was silent for a while before he said calmly, Are you Ruzhen or Rui? He knew that great master Wu Wei had 2 disciples, and he had even seen them more than once, but he had never seriously remembered their Buddhist names before. I'm Ruzhen. The monk put his palms together and saluted. Are you here tonight for revenge? Xian Xuanzi's eyes were a little strange, with self-mockery. 3 years ago, I stabbed the horsetail whisk into Wu Wei's heart with my own hands. Are you here for this cause and effect? Heavenly King, you misunderstood me. Ruzhen insisted on calling Xian Xuanzi with a smile, impeccable. Xian Xuanzi smiled and looked at the rain through the window of the bell tower. The winter mountain under the rain was full of vitality. He narrowed his eyes and said softly, How do you know my contact information? I can contact the military counselor. Ruzhen said lightly, You are now the Heavenly King of Samsara. I can contact the military counselor, so I can find you. Xian Xuanzi said casually, Who is the military counselor? Ruzhen was silent as expected and reasonable. Xian Xuanzi said coldly, Since you don't believe me, why do you come to me? Heavenly King owes my Qingyun temple a cause and effect. Ruzhen's tone also became cold. 3 years ago, Xian Xuanzi went to Qingyun Temple to visit Great Master Wu Wei and directly stabbed the horsetail whisk in his hand into Great Master Wu Wei's heart. Great Master Wu Wei died to fulfill Li Tianlan's wish. But Xian Xuanzi's original actions could be regarded as the cause of a series of events. In the end, you just want revenge, don't you? Xian Xuanzi laughed sarcastically. If you want revenge, you can't live until now. Ruzhen said unceremoniously, I'm looking for you today just to ask you to return a cause and effect to Qingyun Temple. Just say it. Xian Xuanzi said expressionlessly. Ruzhen hesitated and said calmly, Heavenly King, please extend a person's life. Who? Xianxia asked. Qin Weibai. My little junior sister, your current boss. Ruzhen told the truth. She will die. Xianxia suddenly raised his voice. The reason why he joined the Samsara Palace was that Qin Weibai promised him that she would return his daughter's freedom when Kunlun City was destroyed. But now Qin Weibai was going to die. Xianxia suddenly felt a little angry. He didn't know what he was angry about. If you are willing to help, she won't die. Ruzhen said calmly. Xianxia was so angry that he laughed. He snorted heavily and said in a gloomy tone, I can't even see her destiny. Extend her life? How? Will you teach me? Ruzhen was silent. Facing Xianxia's cold eyes, he slowly took out a Buddha bead. This bead is called death substitution. Ruzhen said calmly, with it, Heavenly King can help. Death substitution. In Lin'an, Ruzhen also gave Qin Weibai a Buddha bead and told her that it was called death substitution. But there was no doubt that this one was the real death substitution bead. And the one he gave Qin Weibai was called mortal fate. Ruzhen didn't even need to speculate anything. He could be completely sure that at this time, the mortal fate was already with Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai thought that it was a chance to die for her. With how much she cherished and valued Li Tianlan, how could she be willing to use such a precious opportunity herself? She must give it to Li Tianlan. Only with Li Tianlan could Qin Weibai's mortal fate not be destroyed. In this way, he could extend Qin Weibai's life with the real death substitution bead. That was possible. Death substitution, Xianxia muttered to himself, and his eyes narrowed. Is it the Buddha's relic of that senior? It's the Grand Master's relic. Ruzhen nodded and handed the Buddha bead to Xianxia. I didn't expect there to be such a thing. Xianxia sighed with some disbelief, and then said with some doubt, if there was this thing, Wu Wei wouldn't have died at all. Why, Master said 3 years ago that he could live, but he had to die. There was finally a trace of sadness in Ruzhen's eyes. Great Master Wu Wei might be the only one who knew Qin Weibai's origin, and because of this, he could see the future. Before he left death substitution and mortal fate. He seemed to have arranged everything today quietly. He could not die because of the death substitution bead. He had to die. In addition to fulfilling Li Tianlan's wish, it was more to leave Qin Weibai the last glimmer of life. Another fool who actively seeks death. Xianxia thought of Great Master Wu Wei and muttered to himself. Ruzhen didn't speak. Is it worth it? Xianxia asked, is it worth it for an adopted daughter who is not your biological daughter? Ruzhen looked silent. What is Qin Weibai's origin? Xianxia looked at Ruzhen and said, Wu Wei erased all traces for her. As for her origin, it was also well hidden. The Wang family of Beihai, Kunlun City, and Zhongzhou State have investigated, but they found nothing. Do you know? She came from a small mountain village in the southwest. Xianxia said flatly, when Master met my junior sister, I was there. That year, there was a blizzard in the southwest, and junior sister was lying in the snow. She looked to be about 6 or 7 years old, and her body was covered in blood. Both her internal and external injuries were fatal, but she was very conscious. When we discovered her, she also discovered us. He paused and said strangely, she just looked at her. You couldn't imagine her injuries at that time. Her internal organs were all severely damaged, and it was as if someone had crushed her bones and torn her muscles. It was as if the person who wanted to kill her wanted to torture her in the cruelest way possible, and then casually threw her into the snow to freeze her to death. But she didn't have any fear or pain in that kind of injury and situation. When we found her, she just looked at us calmly, and it could even be said that she was examining us. He shook his head in disbelief. Later, Master took my junior sister back and took good care of her for more than a year. Then she slowly got better. But you still tell me that she came from a small mountain village in the southwest? Xianxia asked. We did pick up my junior sister in a mountainous area in the southwest. I don't know her origin. Only Master and my junior sister know it. Ruzhen shook his head and said, but it doesn't matter. You don't need to know this to prolong her life. Prolong her life, Xianxuanzi's tone was complicated. What if I don't agree? Ruzhen didn't answer this question, but said calmly, this place is very important in the intelligence of Samsara Palace. It is said that several private priests are secret pawns of Kunlun City. It's a good place. It's surrounded by rich people. Maybe some secrets can be exposed when someone prays. Even if there are no secrets, it's a good place to build a stronghold here. Ruzhen looked at Xianxuanzi, whose expression changed a little, and said slowly, I asked you to meet, and you asked me to wait for you here. I'm afraid you don't just want to see me, do you? I heard that Gu Xingyan came to Huading with his daughter and Gu Qianchuan. Xianxuanzi's face was completely gloomy. I won't do anything. If you don't agree, I won't leave. It's you who will have a hard time, and it has nothing to do with me. If you die, you'll pay back the karma. Ruzhen's smile was a little cold. But the problem is, as the only metaphysics grandmaster left in Zhongzhou state, are you willing to die? Xianxuanzi's lips trembled fiercely. Of course, he was unwilling to die. Not for the so-called status and reputation, but for his daughter and granddaughter. Even if I'm willing to take action, it's too late today. There's not enough time. Xianxuanzi took a deep breath and clenched the death scapegoat bead in his hand. Enough time. Ruzhen said calmly, just right. Not enough time. Xianxuanzi was a little irritable. The death scapegoat bead also needs someone to die for it. Where is the person? To die for Qin Weibai, it must be someone who has something to do with her. If the person is not here, then other arrangements are needed. There's not enough time. There's no need for other arrangements. Ruzhen said softly. All of Xianxuanzi's words suddenly stopped. He looked straight at Ruzhen. Ruzhen laughed. She's my little junior sister. I have something to do with her, right? In Lin'an, Qin Weibai asked him about his future plans. He said that everything was up to fate. Tonight, in the bell tower of this church, this was his fate. Xianxuanzi then understood why Ruzhen, who had been out of this world, was so unworldly tonight. Ruzhen slowly sat on the ground. I have nothing to worry about. He said, come on. I want to serve my master as soon as possible. The storm outside the bell tower did not stop at all. A fire lit up in the bell tower. The fire flickered and flickered, flickering. Time passed slowly. The mountain road in the heavy rain in Winter Mountain lit up. A row of Mercedes cars passed through the heavy rain at night and slowly stopped in front of the church. Gu Xingyan got out of the car alone, looked up at the light of the bell tower, and turned to look at the girl who got out of another car. You go up with me. Gu Xingyan glanced at the girl and said calmly. The light in the bell tower seemed to dim a little. Xianxuanzi sat alone in the bell tower, and his face was a little pale. The death scapegoat bead in his hand had completely disappeared. Ruzhen. It also disappeared. Only some dust was floating in the air, and finally fell to the ground. It was blown away by the wind outside the window and disappeared. Xianxuanzi, Wuwei. In addition, Ruzhen, a real eminent monk, finally used a death scapegoat bead to exchange for a trace of Qin Weibai's earthly fate. Another fool. Xianxuanzi whispered. There were footsteps outside the bell tower. The door of the attic was pushed open. Gu Xingyan's figure appeared at the door. Behind him was a girl who was about 20 years old. A picturesque young girl with a beauty that could topple cities. The girl was tall and slender, and her face was delicate and beautiful. She wore a light green dress, and her eyes were bright and beautiful. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and every move she made was filled with the liveliness and charm of youth. She was very obedient and gentle. She stood there casually, but for a moment, she seemed to suppress the light. Vaguely, she had a kind of charm that could steal people's souls. Gu Xingyan stared at the girl, and the corners of his mouth were trembling. Unconsciously, his face was already covered with tears. "Qingcheng, this is Grandpa." Gu Xingyun looked at Xianxia and said calmly. Chapter 353. As the heir of the Wang family of Beihai and one of the most eye-catching protagonists of the maneuver of the two academies, Wang Xingxiao knew the content of the maneuver even faster than Dongqing Wudi. The special warfare system and the dark world had always been absolutely fair and absolutely unfair. In this field where strength was respected and all rules were primitive and rough, absolute privileges also had the capital to be more unimpeded and even unscrupulous than in other fields. What Wang Xingxiao got was not an official document, but a temporarily printed fax. The pale gold city representing the emblem of Kunlun City on the fax was still clear, looking majestic and solemn. The frenzied torrential rain pounded the whole city. In the luxury suite on the top floor of the Huading chief mansion, Wang Xingxiao, who had just taken a bath and was wearing a bathrobe, looked at the pale gold city on the fax with cold and sarcastic eyes. There was only the emblem of Kunlun City on the fax, without the signatures of the office of the president and the cabinet. It could be seen that as soon as this information was sent out of Kunlun City, it was immediately sent to Huading, even at the same speed as it was sent to the office of the president and the cabinet. When countless big shots in Jianghu state, including the presidents of the two academies, did not know the rules and content of the final maneuver, Wang Xingxiao had read the information twice. The information approved by Kunlun City was not complicated, and the content was relatively simple. It was about the content and rules of the final maneuver of the two academies. The content was almost the same as the rules of every previous maneuver. The only change was just a few words, and they were concentrated on the first line of the first page. But the change of just a few words was enough to make the final maneuver extraordinary. Wang Xingxiao threw the information in his hand aside, his face indifferent. The subtle changes in the information were undoubtedly extremely beneficial to him, but there was no joy in his expression, only a trace of subtle but real sarcasm. "It's superfluous. I have a guilty conscience." He glanced at the information on the table and whispered to himself. "What's superfluous?" A hoarse but extremely sexy voice sounded behind Wang Xingxiao. Song Ci, who was also in a bathrobe, came over, tilted her head, and wiped her long hair with a towel. Wang Xingxiao moved his body. Song Ci sat in Wang Xingxiao's arms and handed him the towel. "You help me. Kunlun City has already set the rules for the final maneuver of the two academies. It's ridiculous." Wang Xingxiao carefully wiped Song Ci's long hair and said in a calm tone. From his angle, Song Ci's slender neck and beautiful side face were clearly visible. After the passion faded, there was still a flush on her face, which made her lonely and indifferent aura dissipate a lot, making her look charming and languid. Song Ci picked up the document and glanced at it. She suddenly raised her eyebrows and chuckled, "So exaggerated?" She saw the first detailed rule at first glance. The minute changes that were enough to affect the overall situation were all in the first one. "I really don't know how nervous Kunlun City is to come up with such a rule." Song Ci didn't continue to read. She threw the materials aside, sat in Wang Xingxiao's arms, and put her arms around his neck. "They can't afford to lose." Wang Xingxiao put his arms around Song Ci's slender waist without any excess fat and shook his head. The short rise time is still the most obvious weakness of Kunlun City. If Gu Hanshan loses to Li Tianlan in the final maneuver, the reputation of Kunlun City is bound to be greatly affected. The key is that Li Tianlan's identity is too sensitive. He's the heir of the Li family. If Gu Hanshan loses, it's tantamount to telling everyone that even if the Gu family overthrew the Li family and became the war god clan of Jianghu state, they will never catch up with the Li family. But what Kunlun City is doing now may not be very glorious, and they even dragged you into it. Why did Uncle Wang agree? Song Ci was a little confused. She looked at Wang Xingxiao, whose face was a little ugly, and twisted her body subtly in his arms. Feeling the change of his face, Song Ci laughed. It was not coquettish, but with a kind of indescribable wildness. "Behave yourself." Wang Xingxiao slapped Song Si's plump buttocks, shook his head, and said, I think my father should be tired of continuing to entangle with the Li family. Kunlun City wants to drag me into this, but they are the masterminds after all. This time, the impact on the Wang family of Beihai is not big. And the impact mainly depends on the result. If we lose, Kunlun City's action this time is because they have a guilty conscience. But if we win and guide them well, this time, the cooperation between Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai will be like a lion fighting a rabbit, and the impact may not be so bad. Song Si casually played with a strand of her black hair, thinking without saying a word. When thinking about problems, Song Si was like an unsheathed sword, shining brightly. Even in front of Wang Xingxiao, her elegance was still not reduced. I can get this information, so Gu Hanshan must have gotten it earlier than me. Wang Xingxiao put his arms around Song Si and said calmly, he should be here soon. So soon? Song Si was a little surprised. Kunlun City is so nervous, so Gu Hanshan must be more nervous. What's the rainstorm outside the window? If we can nail Li Tianlan this time, even if it's a knife outside, he will come here as soon as possible. Wang Xingxiao said in a sarcastic tone. Song Si looked at Wang Xingxiao. She sensed his emotions. You don't like this rule? Song Si asked. I just don't think it's necessary. Wang Xingxiao shook his head. It's superfluous. Gu Hanshan doesn't deserve to join hands with me. This sentence, Wang Xingxiao said straightforwardly. His face was calm, but his eyebrows were full of loftiness. Song Si looked at Wang Xingxiao quietly, her eyes soft and a little surprised. Before Li Tianlan appeared, Gu Hanshan was the only one of the younger generation who could be compared with Wang Xingxiao. The wind and thunder veins and the heavenly king heart had their own advantages and disadvantages. Song Si never thought that Wang Xingxiao would look down on Gu Hanshan so much. What do you think of Gu Hanshan? Song Si asked softly. The Gu family's heritage is actually not shallow, but its foundation is not deep. Its inheritance is top-notch, but slightly mediocre. Gu Hanshan is too obsessed and narrow-minded. He has the heavenly king heart, but it's difficult for him to exert his potential. He's far inferior to me. Wang Xingxiao said without thinking. What about Li Tianlan? Song Si asked softly. Wang Xingxiao looked hesitant. Amazing talent. In any era, Li Tianlan can be said to be the kind of person with unparalleled talent. There are too many fetters ahead of him. It's not easy to rebuild the Li family. He wants too much. Although the Li family is making a comeback, Li Tianlan's road has not really begun. Since he entered the secular world, he has been dormant for 3 years after the final battle of Heaven Capital. What does he want in his style of doing? Now he has no chance to show it at all, and I don't know. If he can win the final maneuver, he will have a little chance to exert his revenge. Wang Xingxiao said slowly, speaking of Li Tianlan himself, he is a very pure person, and his boldness in martial arts is beyond the reach of ordinary people. If I were him, I would be inferior to him, and he would be inferior to me. Song Si looked at Wang Xingxiao with a smile in her eyes and eyebrows. She liked this kind of Wang Xingxiao, who commented on his future enemies in a straightforward and confident manner. He never overestimated others or despised his opponents. When he talked about others, he was always measuring himself. That was a kind of boldness and broad-mindedness that could look at the whole world. He might not be as pure as Li Tianlan. But this kind of Wang Xingxiao was what the Wang family of Beihai needed most. Otherwise, he would not have said that if their roles were reversed, he would be inferior to Li Tianlan, and Li Tianlan would be inferior to him. The doorbell rang. Look, it's coming. Wang Xingxiao said with a chuckle. Song Si stood up in Wang Xingxiao's arms and stretched lazily. I'm going back to my room to sleep. Wang Xingxiao also stood up and nodded casually. Song Si returned to the room in a bathrobe. Wang Xingxiao, who was also in a bathrobe, opened the door. Gu Hanshan, the young master of Kunlun City, stood outside with a light smile. Compared to my disturbance tonight, I think the news we just received is the most important. Of course. Wang Xingxiao laughed. Facing Gu Hanshan, he was no longer as unhappy as when he had just received the news. This is a good thing, he said with an extremely sincere expression. Gu Hanshan also held a piece of information that was exactly the same as Wang Xingxiao's. When he heard Wang Xingxiao's statement, he seemed to be slightly relieved. He walked into the suite, sat on the luxurious sofa in the living room, and went straight to the point. So, let's join hands. I totally agree. Wang Xingxiao smiled, but he sighed softly in his heart. In fact, putting aside the past of the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family, he did not have a bad impression of Li Tianlan. If it were Li Tianlan sitting here tonight, he might be happier. But in Jianghu, who could do whatever he wanted? It was all involuntary. I've watched many videos of Li Tianlan's moves. Jiang Shangyu and I have analyzed it and finally come to a conclusion. Gu Hanshan sat on the sofa and said in a calm tone. Wang Xingxiao listened attentively. The swordsmanship of the Li family is broad and profound, and the 24 moves of sword are all-encompassing. So, in our current realm, we can hardly see any weakness in Li Tianlan's sword intent. Gu Hanshan said slowly, Li Tianlan's weakness is his body. After the Battle of Heaven Capital, he started from scratch. In 3 years, he has today's combat capability. Not to mention whether his realm is stable or not, at least his body can't bear his progress. So, if I'm right, Li Tianlan's wind and thunder veins should not exist. His current sword intent is extremely fierce and pure, but it's too hard and easy to break. His attack is powerful, but his defense must be extremely weak, even beyond imagination. This is Li Tianlan's weakness, the most fatal weakness. Wang Xingxiao nodded thoughtfully, but he did not speak. Gu Hanshan waited for a long time and finally couldn't help but ask, what do you think? I agree with your speculation. Wang Xingxiao said calmly, in terms of sword intent, I'm not as good as him, but in terms of physical strength, he's not as good as me. He pointed to the information brought by Gu Hanshan and said with a chuckle, so in this final maneuver, he won't have any chance. Gu Hanshan also laughed, carefree and wantonly. When Gu Hanshan arrived at the chief mansion and conspired with Wang Xingxiao. In the East Emperor Palace, Li Tianlan, who was about to rest with Dongqing Rushi, also received a call from Zhuang Huayang, the dean of the Sky Academy. Tianlan, are you asleep? On the phone, Zhuang Huayang's voice was a little drowsy, as if he had just woken up from a dream. I'm about to sleep. Li Tianlan smiled, but his hands slid down Dongqing Rushi's neckline and held her soft and plump breasts, which were like mutton fat warm jade. Dongqing Rushi's little face was red. She leaned against Li Tianlan and pressed her head against his chest, her body trembling slightly. I received a message here, but the specific documents haven't been sent yet. I think it's necessary to tell you. Zhuang Huayang smiled and said in a serious tone. Li Tianlan had almost never heard Zhuang Huayang speak in this tone. He frowned, reached out his hand from Dongqing Rushi's collar, and said calmly, Principal, go ahead. Zhuang Huayang did not speak for a while. Dongqing Rushi, who was leaning on him, was still pressing her head against Li Tianlan. From the moment Li Tianlan put his claws in, she had been pushing against it. Now that he pulled his claws out, the daughter of the Dongqing clan was still pushing against it, even harder and harder. Li Tianlan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He got out of bed. Dongqing Rushi, whose hair was a little messy, raised her head and stared at Li Tianlan with hazy eyes. It's like this. Zhuang Huayang finally said, the rules of the final maneuver have been determined, as well as the sequence of the maneuver. Li Tianlan seemed to realize something and narrowed his eyes. What is the content of the first drill? He took the initiative to ask. This time, Zhuang Huayang was silent for a long time before he slowly said, it's a tactical drill, teamwork, and reconnaissance. His voice was very soft, but the meaning behind it was extremely rich. Li Tianlan finally sneered. Kunlun City is really bold. Tactical drills, reconnaissance, and camouflage were all very normal drill subjects. The first item, which was also the initial content of the maneuver of the two academies, focused on teamwork. The focus of teamwork was on teamwork. Teamwork was the finale of the final maneuver of the two academies in any session. It was extremely important. It was a collision of teams. Li Tianlan had almost no team now. When Li Beidian and the others were seriously injured, he only had Dongqing Rushi and Du Hanyin by his side. What he was going to face was the phantom world of Wang Xingxiao and Song Ci. It was the 3000 world of Gu Hanshan and Jiang Shangyu. There were also many teams attached to the phantom world and the 3000 world. Simply speaking, on the first day of the maneuver, Li Tianlan would face the cooperation of several super teams. I got it. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said blandly. Zhuang Huayang wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Finally, he silently hung up the phone. He knew very well what the main purpose of the office of the president agreeing to this plan was. Li Tianlan was an ally of the academics. After all, not all allies were completely close. Li Tianlan hung up the phone and did not speak for a long time. Dongqing Rushi, who quietly took off her pajamas and hid her body in the quilt, said softly, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Li Tianlan laughed. For the first time since he came back from the polar region, his eyes became so sharp and brilliant. "I just suddenly decided on one thing." "What?" Dongqing Rushi asked. "You can join the East Emperor Palace. But on the day of the final maneuver, I hope you and Du Hanyin can abstain." Li Tianlan said slowly, word by word. His eyes changed, like a messy rainstorm, like a blazing wildfire. Wind, frost, rain, snow, the scorching sun and stars alternated repeatedly in his eyes, and finally turned into determination. The final maneuver was his first step to the stage of Zhongzhou state. Now Li Honghe had fallen from the invincible realm. Qin Weibai and Situ Tsanyue went to snow country. Outside the maneuver, the only one he could rely on was Lin Fengting. But in the maneuver, no matter what he had to face. Chapter 354. For nearly a decade in Zhongzhou state, there had always been a saying in the military that was unpresentable but taken for granted. The Border Praetorian Corps, known as the most elite super-large comprehensive corps in Zhongzhou state, could even be said to be the private army of the Dongqing clan. In the beginning, Zhongzhou state had secretly called it the Dongqing Corps, but after receiving different degrees of warnings, everyone realized how powerful it was. So the saying of the Dongqing Corps gradually disappeared and was replaced by another name. The God of Massacre Corps. This was tantamount to saying that the Border Control Corps was Dongqing Wudi's own corps. But after some meaningful and clear remarks were missing, this name was finally acquiesced by all parties. It was true, at least infinitely close. The Border Control Corps was known as the small military headquarters of Zhongzhou state. After the first commander Li Guangtu committed treason, the Border Control Corps naturally began to change from the original small-scale special warfare agency to a military force, and eventually formed a behemoth with a total number of nearly 600,000 troops today. There were 5 trump card armies in the Border Control Corps, namely Thunderbolt, Pegasus, Bloodbath, Wild Sand, and Black Dragon, which were stationed in Nanyun, 3 provinces in the east, Tibet, and Beijiang. They had great influence. In addition, there were 4 independent airborne divisions, 2 special investigation brigades, nearly 20 flying formations, 1 intelligence department, and 6 special warfare brigades. All the institutions were in order. With such strength, even in the whole dark world, it could be called a giant. This was also the capital for Dongqing Wudi to be domineering in Zhongzhou state. For the entire Border Control Corps, Dongqing Wudi, who was not in the invincible realm, was like a god, sacred, and majestic. He was the spiritual symbol of the whole corps. The 4 commanders promoted by Dongqing Wudi, Wang Wandian of the Bloodbath Battalion, Shi Hanbing of the Wild Sand Battalion, Xiao Dongzhan of the Pegasus Battalion, and Sheng Huining of the Black Dragon Battalion, were the pillars of the Border Control Corps. The middle and high-level officers were the foundation of the pillar, and the elite soldiers were the cornerstone of the corps. This was an unbreakable and great whole. It was famous for 2 iron rules, which had now almost become the soul of the Border Control Corps. The first rule was that as long as the Border Control Corps could still fight, the officers must be at the forefront when charging without destroying their own formation. The officers must be at the end when retreating. The marshal was at the forefront, followed by the general, followed by the colonel, and then the lieutenant. The second rule was that under no circumstances would the Border Control Corps keep any captives. Dongqing Wudi once said something that shocked the whole Jianghu state: "My soldiers are fighting, not if king staying behind to look after children." That's what he said, and that's what he did. Dongqing Wudi had been in charge of the Border Control Corps for more than 20 years. There had been countless border conflicts with the superpowers in the Dark World, India, Snow Country, Annan State, and Gaoshan. No one who made an enemy out of him would survive. Every time they charged, he, dressed in the marshal's uniform, would take the lead and be the last to retreat. With such a marshal, every time the Border Control Corps fought, hundreds of thousands of troops in the Border Control Corps would follow Dongqing Wudi's sword. For more than 20 years, he had forged the fiercest and strongest military soul in the entire Jianghu state with the name of God of Massacre. He was invincible and invincible for Jianghu state. For decades, Dongqing Wudi was definitely the best commander. A soldier who could make an army of 600,000 die for him. The word "great" was enough to describe it. Because of his greatness, Dongqing Wudi had a heavier responsibility. Heavier responsibility meant more weighing and thinking. Therefore, Dongqing Wudi was under a lot of pressure, as heavy as a mountain. A few hours had passed since the call with Ning Ziyuan, and Dongqing Wudi still hadn't left the building of the army headquarters. The night in Yuzhou was quiet and solemn. He pushed open the window of the office, and the sultry wind blew in, sweeping away a lot of pungent smoke. Dongqing Wudi squinted at the night sky and remained silent. Bai Qingzhao, the deputy secretary general of the army headquarters, still stayed in the office, accompanying Dongqing Wudi in silence. "Minister, have you thought it through?" In the long silence, Bai Qingzhao suddenly asked. The office was very quiet. So his voice was hoarse, which even he found harsh. Dongqing Wudi's body seemed to shake. Bai Qingzhao was his brother-in-law. Even though he and Bai Qingxian had been in a cold war for many years, they were still close friends. Most of the time, Bai Qingzhao would not call him by his title, but by his name. Now he called him minister. It could be seen how important Dongqing Wudi's next decision was, especially for the relationship between the Bai family and the Dongqing clan. The document of Kunlun City with the seals of the office of the president and the cabinet was still on the desk. The content of the first maneuver in the document was extremely dazzling. Teamwork. Without thinking at all, Dongqing Wudi knew what Li Tianlan would face in the final maneuver. He would face Wang Xingxiao, Gu Hanshan, Jiang Shangyu, Song Ci, and others, plus their team. Most of the main forces of the East Emperor Palace were seriously injured. Even if the East Emperor Palace was in its heyday, with Li Tianlan, it would be difficult to face such a lineup. Li Tianlan seemed to be doomed. Whether he could survive the final maneuver and make a comeback, the Li family, which was still alone, could not decide. Sai City, which had lost its strength and the murderous weapon Setting Sun, could not decide. Samsara Palace, which was out of reach, could not decide. Only the giant group and Dongqing Wudi had the power and strength to intervene in the final maneuver. As for the academics and the office of the president, they agreed to the document and were waiting for Dongqing Wudi's decision. Bai Qingzhao looked at Dongqing Wudi's back. His eyes were extremely complicated. At the beginning of the month, his father, Bai Zhanfang, and his sister, Bai Qingxian, went to Zhongyuan together. As one of the core members of the Bai family, Bai Qingzhao naturally knew the reason. Li Tianlan's life and death now seemed to be decided in the final maneuver, but in fact, it was in the hands of Dongqing Wudi. No one would doubt that the Dongqing clan did not have this power. As long as Dongqing Wudi was willing to pay the price, not to mention a few young people. Even if Gu Xingyan recovered from his injury and joined hands with Wang Tianzong, Li Tianlan would not die. But Dongqing Wudi's willingness or unwillingness was a swing between family and country. I'm still waiting for news from Ziyuan. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. Does it make sense? Bai Qingzhao said in a low voice, Ning Ziyuan has a deep foundation in the Eastern Theater of Operations, but if he leaves that position, it will be difficult for him to control this maneuver. He will make efforts, but his strength is definitely not enough to turn the tide. You know this. Dongqing Wudi smiled bitterly. Between family and country. He muttered to himself, and his smile was full of bitterness. Anyone who broke the rules would have to pay the price. Kunlun City changed the order of the final maneuver and increased the casualty rate. But all of this was within the scope of Kunlun City's power, that was, within the scope permitted by the rules. If Dongqing Wudi wanted to intervene in the final maneuver, it was tantamount to breaking the rules, so he must pay the price. Just like Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai failed to attack Li Honghe and could only watch the Li family make a comeback, whether they were willing or not. Some things had to be done, and they had to bear the consequences. And the price Dongqing Wudi needed to pay could only come from the Border Control Corps. He was now the executive minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State and still the commander of the Border Control Corps. This part-time job must be given away, but giving up this position did not mean that the Dongqing clan was willing to give up the dominance of the Border Control Corps. With Dongqing Wudi's foundation and prestige in the Border Control Corps, in a short time, even if all the 4 commanders of the Border Control Corps were removed, the new commander could not quickly establish his own team. By the time the new commander established his authority, Dongqing Wudi had already established his own order in the military. The Wang family of Beihai was extremely enthusiastic about the position of the Border Control Corps. If the Dongqing clan made a deal with the Wang family of Beihai, under normal circumstances, it would not be a one-off deal at all. At least for a few years, it would involve many subtle balances and compromises. That was under normal circumstances. But if Dongqing Wudi risked universal condemnation and broke the rules, the price he had to pay might be the control of the entire Border Control Corps, or at least most of it. What he gave up was more than most of the control. There were also nearly 600,000 soldiers who worshipped him like a god. If the morale of the Border Control Corps was unstable, it would become a national affair. And from the bottom of his heart, Dongqing Wudi did not want to experience the guilt and entanglement of giving up nearly 600,000 troops. Give up? How could he? But if he didn't give up, would he watch Li Tianlan be besieged in the final maneuver? If Li Tianlan died in the final maneuver, not to mention what would happen to Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai, the relationship between him and Bai Qingxian would come to an end. At that time, the poor woman who had made Dongqing Wudi feel guilty for many years would definitely take revenge on the Dongqing clan at all costs. The Bai family and the Dongqing clan parted ways, the giant group split, and the family was separated. This was a family affair. How could there be absolute fairness and justice between families and countries? Dongqing Wudi was lost in thought. This was a choice between family and country, and it was also the entanglement between the responsibility of a husband and the vocation of a soldier. If you had known this, why did you do it? Bai Qingzhao suddenly said. Her tone was light, without sarcasm, anger, or any emotion, as if she were saying a fact similar to 1 + 1 = 2. He really didn't mean to mock the Dongqing clan. The Dongqing clan was not the only one who tried to change. That year, when all the plans started, Dongqing Hongguang and Dongqing Wudi were present. His father, Bai Zhanfang, was present, and so was Bai Qingzhao himself. They were all in the game. It was just that this game of chess had been played for more than 20 years. For the Li family, it was just the beginning, but for them, it had already entered the end stage. From the middle stage to the end stage, the final maneuver was the key of the key. But all the people in the game did not expect that Dongqing Wudi, who was extremely determined because of his responsibility, would become so hesitant at this time because of his responsibility. It was not wrong to choose the Li family back then. Dongqing Wudi said calmly, "We chose the Li family because it was the best choice and the only choice." It was the same more than 20 years ago, and it is still the same today more than 20 years later. Your decision? Bai Qingzhao didn't go to Dongxing Wudi to discuss right and wrong, but just asked with a poker face. Dongxing Wudi fell silent again. His expression kept changing. Under the light of the office, it was clear that he was in pain and entanglement. No matter what decision you make, I will understand you, Bai Qingzhao said softly. Bai Qingzhao said softly. These were words from the bottom of his heart, and he could understand. But it is limited to understanding. Understanding did not mean approval. Understanding was rational analysis after putting aside one's standpoint. Acknowledging him was a rather callous choice from his own standpoint. If one did not agree, one would be an enemy. The Bai family made a choice back then. Today, they would make the same choice. There was no reason, just because of that year. What do you suggest? Dongxing Wudi suddenly asked. Just abandon it. Bai Qingzhao said without hesitation. It's easy for you to say. Just abandon the 600,000 troops. Dongxing Wudi looked displeased. I know it's not easy. Bai Qingzhao said softly, but are you willing to give up Li Tianlan? Dongxing Wudi was even more displeased. If he was willing, why should he be entangled now? He put Li Tianlan on the same level as the 600,000 troops, which showed that he cared about Li Tianlan. Since you are unwilling, then abandon it. Bai Qingzhao stood up, threw a cigarette to Dongxing Wudi, and said softly, don't forget our original intention. At that time, you, me, and Uncle Zhou sought change. Our ultimate goal was to get rid of the loose alliance of the giant group. It was destined to be a process of giving up and gaining. Wudi, you have your 600,000 troops, and the Bai family and the Zhou family also have their own concerns and responsibilities. But if we can pick it up, we can put it down. When the change we want appears, we'll just take back what we put down. He patted Dongxing Wudi on the shoulder. This is your second year. You have at least 8 years. Why can't you afford to wait? If you abandon the Border Control Corps, you will still be the executive minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State. Dongxing Wudi's body shook violently, and he didn't speak for a long time. The moon outside the window was rising. The army headquarters building was dark, and the sky was full of stars. After a long time, Dongxing Wudi picked up his mobile phone. Ning Ziyuan hadn't replied to him yet. He had left the Eastern Theater of Operations. It would take time for many things to work, at least overnight. Get the car ready. Dongxing Wudi said in a low voice, go to the Hidden Dragon Sea. I want to meet the president in person. Bai Qingzhao's body relaxed quietly, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Dongxing Wudi walked out of the office, took out his mobile phone, and dialed the phone number of General Wang Wandian, the former commander of the Blood Battalion of the Border Control Corps and the current commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations. Marshal. The phone was quickly connected. Wang Wantian's steady voice sounded, extremely powerful. Wandian, prepare according to plan number 2. Inform Huaining. Time is pressing. You have to hurry. Dongxing Wudi rubbed his temples, and his tone was a little tired. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. Wang Wantian's deep voice sounded again. Marshal, have you really decided? Dongxing Wudi smiled, a little self-deprecating. Go ahead. He gave the order in a calm tone. Wang Wantian took a deep breath, said yes, and then hung up the phone. Dongxing Wudi put down his mobile phone, walked out of the army headquarters building, and looked at the starry sky above. Between family and country. In his decades, someone had told him that when the country was about to fall, how could the family survive? Someone had also told him that the bounden duty of a soldier was to protect the family and defend the country. But no one had ever told him how to choose between family and country. So the choice he made tonight was his own. The country was not broken. The family was about to fall. Chapter 355. There is a chapter called Between Families and Countries before this. It's very important. Don't miss it. If the order of the final maneuver of the two academies was adjusted to target Li Tianlan, then another change after the order adjustment made everyone smell the smell of blood. Strictly speaking, this was the only change. The order of the content of the maneuver was disrupted, but it was not too much or too little. It was not considered a change. What Kunlun City changed this time was just a number. In the first round of the final maneuver of the two academies, the predicted casualty rate of the teamwork combat was 55%. Compared with the 30% in the last session, the extra 25% was destined to be a bloody fight to the death. Allowing more than half of the casualty rate was tantamount to Kunlun City telling everyone that they could be ruthless in teamwork combat without worrying about everything. It also foreshadowed Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanshan to be ruthless to Li Tianlan. The heavenly son of Zhongzhou State, the heir of the Li family, the first person of the young generation, in the maneuver, if they were unlucky, they might become part of the 55% casualty rate. Li Tianlan could clearly feel the gloomy smell of blood and killing intent behind the fluctuation of this index. Because of this, he asked Dongqing Rushi and Du Hanin to abstain and chose to face everyone by himself. Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi could no longer talk about implicating each other. But there was no doubt that if she really accompanied Li Tianlan to the battlefield, Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanshan would definitely kill her. A daughter of the Dongqing clan who had no position was worth winning over by anyone, but once she took a clear side, she would be an enemy. In the maneuver that seemed to be absolutely fair, there was no need to talk nonsense in the face of the enemy. Li Tianlan didn't think he would lose in the maneuver. But at the critical moment, it was really difficult for him to guarantee that he could take care of the people around him. Whether it was for Dongqing Rushi herself or because of his relationship with the Dongqing clan, Li Tianlan didn't want any accident to happen to Dongqing Rushi. It was late at night when he persuaded Dongqing Rushi, which was the early morning of July 23rd. That afternoon, Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi appeared in the Sky Academy. Before preparing to attend the symposium held by Gu Xingyun, Li Tianlan went to the ward of Li Beidian and others. Li Beidian, Su Chu, and Ning Qiancheng. The three of them were real brothers in hardship. They lay side by side on the bed, looking gloomy. Du Hanin, Yu Qinyan, and Yi Huayu stood in the ward helplessly. The atmosphere was so oppressive that it almost froze. When Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi walked in, they just looked at him. The atmosphere became even more oppressive. What happened? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. Ning Qiancheng, who was closest to the door, glanced at him and shook his head with a bitter smile. He did not speak. Li Tianlan glanced around and fixed his eyes on Du Hanin. Du Hanin calmly waved a document in her hand. It was information about the contents of the maneuver. The symposium held by Gu Xingyun would officially begin in less than 2 hours. At noon, all the people who were eligible to be invited received this information. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth moved, and he was about to speak. Damn! Li Beidian suddenly said, I'm participating in the team battle in the maneuver. Su Chu and Ning Qiancheng raised their eyebrows. Just when they were about to say that they would go regardless of the consequences, Li Tianlan interrupted them with a smile. It's useful for you to go with your current injury. At least you can get rid of a few cannon fodders. Then I'll drag you away and finally lose without knowing why. Is this the result you want? Li Beidian gritted his teeth. He should not have been so seriously injured in the battle with Gu Yulan. If it weren't for Gu Yunxia's sudden sneak attack, he would definitely be the real core combat force standing next to Li Tianlan today. The great void sword was unsheathed. He could not defeat Gu Hanshan and Wang Xingxiao, but at least he could share a lot of pressure for Li Tianlan. No one is allowed to go. Li Tianlan said calmly. He glanced at Du Hanin and was silent for a while. Suddenly, he said, you and Rushi will abstain in the afternoon. Dongqing Rushi held Li Tianlan's hand, and there was nothing unusual on her face. Today, she was wearing a pair of black shorts, a white t-shirt, and a cute bun hairstyle. Standing beside Li Tianlan, she was quiet, like a blade of grass. Abstain? Du Hanyin looked up in astonishment. Everyone's eyes were focused on Li Tianlan. Abstain. Li Tianlan nodded. Young governor, I'm not afraid of death. Du Hanyin bit her lip and said in a determined tone. She joined Sai City 3 years ago in Heaven Capital and had been regarded as a member of Sai City for the past 3 years. During these 3 years, Du Hanyin's realm had not made much progress and she barely entered the thunder-shocking realm. But her mutant wind vein was becoming mature. It didn't take time at all for her to be regarded as a capable assassin in Sai City. She had the wind vein, a mutant one at that. In the whole Sai City and even the whole dark world, Tribulation, who was known as the King of Shadow and had dual wind veins, could be said to be her best teacher. Under the protection of Sai City, she blended herself perfectly into the shadow. In the darkness, she got her long-lost dignity. What about before? After her family was destroyed and before she entered Sai City, she was still sleeping with different men in the Sky Academy, just for a few pitiful credits. Du Hanyin was willing to die for Sai City and the young governor of Sai City just for the small but significant changes in the past 3 years. I don't doubt your determination. Li Tianlan said softly, but it's meaningless. The opponent's lineup this time looks really luxurious. We don't have such a lineup, so we have to admit that we can't compete with them. It's not shameful to abstain temporarily. You'll have nothing if you die. You won't play a role here in the future. I alone am enough for the maneuver here. He paused and continued, if you follow me, I'm afraid that I won't be able to take care of you and will be distracted. This was the reason to persuade Dongqing Rushi. It would not be a problem to persuade the people of East Emperor Palace. I was thinking that when you came back, East Emperor Palace would make a killing in the final maneuver, and our brothers would be in the limelight. Now, Ning Qianxing laughed self-deprecatingly and bitterly. Our future is not in the Sky Academy. Li Tianlan laughed. This is just a starting point. The sky of our future is in the south. He looked at Ning Qianxing meaningfully. The south? Everyone was a little surprised. At this time in Jianghu State, most people would think that Li Tianlan would develop in the north or in Jianghu after graduation. Situ Cangyue, the governor of Sai City, used the national weapon setting sun to seriously injure Gu Xingyun. Under the anger of the higher-ups, Sai City suffered heavy losses. Liaodong and Longjiang province had now fallen into the hands of Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai respectively. But in Guangdong, Sai City still had the final say. As the young governor of Sai City, it was natural for Li Tianlan to go to Guangdong. Jianghu was the place where the Li family made a comeback, and the political wealth left by Wu Jingmin was enough to make Li Tianlan go smoothly. These two places were the most suitable for Li Tianlan. Who could imagine that he was going to the south? The south, Li Baitian's eyes lit up quietly. Where? Tiannan. Li Tianlan took a deep look at Li Baidian and then at Ning Qianxing. Tiannan was outside the territory of Zhongzhou State, within the sphere of influence of Zhongzhou State, and outside the constraints of rules. It was not until this moment, facing Li Baidian and Ning Qianxing, that Li Tianlan clearly realized what it meant for him to go to Tiannan. Many arrangements, intentionally or unintentionally, had been made a long time ago, and it was not until today that they showed their great value. In Tiannan, the current commander of the Tiannan Freedom Corps, which actually belonged to Zhongzhou State under the banner of the rebel army of Annan State, was Ning Ziyuan. He was Ning Qianxing's father. When East Emperor Palace went to Tiannan, Ning Qianxing could invisibly play the role of Li Tianlan spokesperson in Tiannan. In Zhongzhou State, Tiannan was located in the southwest. Some things in the special warfare system of Tiannan would frequently connect with the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters. Who was the current minister of the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters? It was Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana sword master of Mount Shu. He was Li Baitian's first senior brother. If Ning Qianxing was Li Tianlan's spokesperson in Tiannan, Li Baidian was the bridge between Tiannan and the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Between Tiannan and Zhongzhou State, the biggest force was the Blood Battalion of the Border Control Corps of Zhongzhou State. Wang Wantian, the commander of the Blood Battalion, was transferred to the Eastern Theater of Operations as the commander. But now, the core of the Dongqing clan was still the commander of the Blood Battalion. Thunder God. Dongqing Rushi's godfather. He was also the uncle who took Li Tianlan to the desert from the border. In a trance, there seemed to be a golden path in front of him. Until now, Li Tianlan vaguely had a feeling of sudden enlightenment. Ning Qiansheng, Li Beidian, Dongqing Rushi, Thunder God, Ning Ziyuan, they were like chess pieces scattered on a misty chessboard. All of them were vague and had no connection with each other. But now, with the placement of Li Tianlan, the biggest chess piece, the fog dissipated and everything became clear. Li Tianlan took a deep breath. He saw the chessboard of Tiannan with all the pieces placed. He also saw in Tiannan his way to get rid of the fate of being a chess piece and become a chess player. That was where the real beginning began. It's Tiannan. Li Tianlan muttered to himself. Tiannan? An old voice rang out at the door of the ward. Zhuang Huayang, the principal of the Sky Academy, came in accompanied by Qin Ku, the deputy director of the teaching office. He looked at Li Tianlan, who looked calm, with undisguised complexity and realization in his eyes. He was also a player in the game. So, like others, he saw Li Tianlan's future with a gloomy fog. But it was not until he heard Li Tianlan mention the word Tiannan that he suddenly realized what a wonderful move the hand that had pushed Li Tianlan behind the scenes had made in Tiannan. Tiannan. For Zhuang Huayang, it was like a thunder. Everything seemed so obvious. But Ning Ziyuan went to Tiannan because the Wang family of Beihai was siding with the same faction and fighting against the different faction. Thunder God of the Blood Battalion was the prelude to Dongqing Wudi's trade with the Border Control Corps after Wang Wandian left. Mount Shu became the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters, which was expected by the public and supported by the Prince Group. All the forces acted unintentionally, but in the end, they operated a situation that was like heaven for Li Tianlan. Zhuang Huayang did not believe that it was all unintentional. He would rather believe that there was a hand behind all this that had reached into the inside of the major groups and was carefully and quietly controlling the situation. This was truly unfathomable. He just did not know who this hand, who could be called a national master, was. Was it Li Honghe? Was it the Dongqing clan? Or Qin Weibai? No matter who it was too late when the people in the game realized it. The Li family, a big dragon that had been trapped on the chessboard for more than 20 years, had been completely revived in silence. Zhuang Huayang sighed and shook his head, thinking of the call with the chief last night. Before that, he understood the chief's approach, but today, when he heard the words, Tiannan, he realized that he had to remind the chief's means. Chapter 356. Li Tianlan glanced at Zhuang Huayang. His eyes were calm, so calm that there was some politeness in them. It's Tiannan, he said softly. Zhuang Huayang was speechless for a while. It was too late to say anything now. The Special Warfare Headquarters was established, Ning Ziyuan was transferred, and the Blood Legion completed the handover. Under such circumstances, Li Tianlan's trip to Tiannan was really like turning into a dragon when encountering a storm. Zhuang Huayang was convinced, and he even had some awe for the person behind the scenes. To gather the general trend of Zhongzhou State in Tiannan, such a technique was truly grand and exquisite to the extreme. When the storm in Zhongzhou State was unstable, he calmly placed a chess piece in Tiannan. It seemed a little unreasonable, but he suddenly revitalized the whole chessboard. What convinced Zhuang Huayang the most was that there was no sign of any deliberate action at all. Naturally, several major forces operated at the same time, and they had inadvertently created such a situation that no one had expected. After the Yuzhou conference, the Li family made a comeback. Everyone's eyes were focused on the northeast and southeast. Some people were guarding against the Li family, and some were counting their gains. The situation in Tiannan was obvious, but because everything seemed so natural, no one had realized it yet. The easiest to overlook was often the most obvious. For example, the sunlight during the day. For example, the starry night sky. Zhuang Huayang didn't know how much preparation the person behind the scenes had made for such a wonderful technique. But if this person hadn't been clear about the situation in Jianghu state, there would have been no such effect as today's thunder and silence. When did all of this start? Zhuang Huayang pondered silently. The general trend of Tiannan and the changes of several sensitive positions were the result of the internal operations of the Wang family of Beihai, the Prince Group, and the Giant Group. The Yuzhou Conference, Linfen and the Northeast had indeed attracted everyone's attention. Thus, for the time being, no one had noticed Tiannan. This didn't seem hard to understand, but it was also hard to understand. After all, Li Tianlan was here. He was a rare martial arts genius in Jianghu state for decades. Li Tianlan could be said to be the most central figure in all these changes. How could he be ignored? To anyone, ignoring such a martial arts genius, ignore? Ignore. Zhuang Huayang's brain suddenly became a little sluggish. He looked at Li Tianlan's calm face. While thinking, Zhuang Huayang's back was covered in cold sweat. Ignore Li Tianlan? No one would be so stupid. Even if there were in the past, there wouldn't be a second time after their return. Zhuang Huayang had never ignored Li Tianlan. He was a martial arts prodigy, but it was not until this moment that he suddenly realized that Li Tianlan was only a martial arts genius in his mind. That was the only impression he had. Li Tianlan had done a lot, but he seemed to have done nothing. With his strength and status, there was nothing he could do now. In the final battle of Heaven Capital, he was a pawn of Jianghu state. In the process of the Li family returning to the peak, he was like a pawn of the Li family. He was so pure, so clear-headed, and had always been silently improving his strength. He really didn't consider anything, or at least he didn't show it. Why did the Li family suddenly collapse back then? Did the Wang family of Beihai do something secretly? What resources did Kunlun City use in the plan back then? Would these resources be clues? What was the truth behind Li Guangtu's treason? From the beginning to the end, Li Tianlan didn't even care about this series of questions that he had to consider in his position. He knew nothing about the past and didn't explore it. Instead, he focused purely on improving his strength, waiting for the opportunity to take the first step. He was too obvious. So much so that it even became his label in people's eyes. Zhuang Huayang finally knew why the powerful Wang family of Beihai and the delicate Kunlun city ignored Tiannan. Their eyes were indeed on the northeast and Jianghu, but also on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan showed that he just wanted to improve his strength. And what they paid attention to was Li Tianlan himself. So that in the end, Tiannan, such a huge omission was formed. Zhuang Huayang's heart was a little cold. He didn't know whether Li Tianlan did all this intentionally or unintentionally. If the answer was intentional, he was willing to use himself as a chess piece and use the purest way to attract everyone's attention. How scheming was he to be so dormant? The corners of Zhuang Huayang's mouth kept trembling. At this moment, he wanted to say a lot, but he didn't know why he couldn't say anything. It's almost time. Li Tianlan looked down at his watch. It was 2:20 in the afternoon. Gu Xingyun's symposium was held at 3:00 in the conference room of the Sky Academy, about 15 minutes away from here. He nodded to Zhuang Huayang, then looked at Dongqing Rushi and Du Hanin, and said calmly, "Let's go." Tianlan. Zhuang Huayang took a deep breath and suddenly shouted. Li Tianlan turned to look at him. "What's your plan?" When he asked this, Zhuang Huayang's tone was a little bitter. The final maneuver of the two academies was a grand event of the special warfare system of Jianghu state. Kunlun City had the greatest dominance. But as the current ruling group of Jianghu state, if the academics insisted on standing as an ally, even if it couldn't change the order of the maneuver, it could at least fight for more living space for Li Tianlan and let him see the sincerity of the academics. But the chief didn't do so. Instead, he chose silence and acquiescence. Li Tianlan was still an ally of the academics. But this subtle change began after Li Tianlan established a closer relationship with the giant group. The academics hoped that Li Tianlan had something to do with the giant group, but they didn't want their relationship to be too close. Li Tianlan, who largely depended on the academics to survive, was far more in line with the interests of the academics than Li Tianlan, who was at ease in the two groups. But Zhou Yuanshan's trip to Jianghu was tantamount to the giant group clearly announcing to the outside world that they would create their core team with Li Tianlan as the core for the next few decades. The academics could only take this opportunity to pressure Li Tianlan and the giant group. In such a state, Li Tianlan was an ally of the academics, but he was more like a pawn used by the academics to ask for benefits from the giant group. The most important thing was that Li Tianlan was willing to be a pawn of the Li family, but he might not be willing to be a pawn of the academics. Now the situation in Tiannan was gradually clear, and Li Tianlan's future was predictable. He was the strongest ally in the future, but in the next final maneuver, he would face an extremely embarrassing situation. Zhuang Huayang really wanted to know what Li Tianlan's plan was. Rushi and Han Yin will abstain. Li Tianlan said calmly, I will participate in the final maneuver myself and participate in their so-called team battle. By yourself? Zhuang Huayang's face changed dramatically. I won't lose. Li Tianlan said blandly. Zhuang Huayang smiled bitterly again. The academics had made their own moves. The key was whether Dongqing Wudi was willing to break the rules for Li Tianlan. If Dongqing Rushi did not abstain, Dongqing Wudi was undoubtedly more likely to take action for his daughter. But if Dongqing Rushi abstained, on one side was the responsibility of the Border Control Corps, and on the other side was the weight of Li Tianlan. How would Dongqing Wudi choose? If he chose to give up, this maneuver would be a dead end for Li Tianlan. If he lost, Li Tianlan would die. If he won, Li Tianlan would still die. Li Tianlan could win with such a lineup. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai would definitely kill this threat at all costs. This might be an opportunity for the academics. But if the giant group gave up, would the big shots of the academics really offend the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City for Li Tianlan? Who was willing to bear that kind of pressure? Zhuang Huayang had a splitting headache. He took a deep breath, patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder, and said in a deep voice, I'll call the leading cadre right away. Li Tianlan smiled, turned, and walked out of the ward. The conference room of the Sky Academy was very large. The environment was pale white, simple and spacious. When Li Tianlan walked into the conference room with Dongqing Rushi and Du Hanin 15 minutes in advance, Gu Xingyun was already sitting in the main seat of the conference room. Gu Qianchuan, who used to serve as a real marshal in Zhongzhou State and now became a nominal title with the disbandment of the Snowdance Corps, stood quietly beside Gu Xingyun with an indifferent expression. The fresh sunshine after the rain gently sprinkled into the main seat of the conference room. The two invincible realm experts of Zhongzhou State stood and bathed in the sunshine, as if they were wearing a layer of golden clothes. There were already many figures in the conference room. Gu Xingyun's symposium was held by the top young people in the two academies. To be exact, they were high-level people who had a clear team and served as the core figures in their respective teams, or the individual immortals with great personal strength. Li Tianlan had read the information. This time, there were about 30 forces in the two academies, and the total number of people was about 750. Under normal circumstances, this should be the total number of people in the team cooperation maneuver. There were lunatics who participated in the team maneuver to save their lives, but there were not many in previous years. In the final maneuver, where the casualty rate was at least 30%, an individual facing a team was tantamount to courting death, or it was tantamount to giving credits to others. According to the rules of the two academies, the final maneuver of the two academies was important, but credits were more important. Therefore, the maneuver seemed to be a contest of force, but the tricks in it also tested a person's mind. Every student would consider how to make use of their strengths to make up for their weaknesses and strive for the most credits to improve their ranking. As soon as Li Tianlan and the other two walked into the conference room, almost everyone's eyes were focused on them. Most people's eyes were a little strange. Wang Xingxiao and Song Ci sat in the middle. Seeing Li Tianlan come in, Wang Xingxiao waved his hand with a smile as a greeting, looking very friendly. Gu Hanzhan, the young master of Kunlun City, and Gu Yulan, the last disciple of Gu Qianchuan, sat together. They were almost next to Wang Xingxiao and Song Ci. Gu Yulan, whose face was still a little pale, was still wearing a mask. She snuggled up to Gu Hanzhan like a little bird. Jianghu sat on the other side of Gu Hanzhan. Before Li Tianlan came in, several super experts of the young generation of Zhongzhou state had been whispering together. What they said did not matter at all. What mattered was that the signal they gave was clear enough, and that was enough. Li Tianlan was expressionless. He picked a chair at random and sat down, quietly waiting for the meeting to begin. Time passed slowly. At 3:00 sharp, the bell rang in the office. Gu Xingyun, who had been sitting in the main seat with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. He glanced around, and a smile bloomed on his elegant face. Everyone is here. Gu Xingyun said, let's have a meeting. Li Tianlan froze and subconsciously narrowed his eyes. Everyone is here? Sitting next to him, Du Hanin and Dongqing Rushi were celebrities of the two academies respectively. Before the meeting began, they had introduced the main figures present to Li Tianlan. The conference room was large and there were many people sitting, but it was far from complete. There were about 30 forces of the two academies that had not been disbanded after 3 years. But Du Hanin and Dongqing Rushi introduced too few. 5 from the Sky Academy. 7 from the Deep Sea Academy. This also included East Emperor Palace, 3000 World, Phantom Palace, and Jile Mountain. That was to say, half of the young forces of the two academies were not present at this time. But Gu Xingyun said that everyone was here. Li Tianlan did not think that Gu Xingyun would make mistakes in this kind of thing. Then it could only prove one thing. In this team maneuver, more than half of the forces in the two academies chose to abstain for various reasons. Abstaining was allowed in the maneuver of the two academies. But abstaining was not without a price. Some credits would be deducted. So abstaining was not so easy to determine. But even so, more than half of the forces chose to abstain. What did this mean? Li Tianlan observed everyone in the conference room calmly. Of the 12 forces present at this time, in addition to East Emperor Palace, Phantom Palace, 3000 World, and Jile Mountain, there were 8 other forces. There was no doubt that these were the forces led by Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanzhan. The rules set by Kunlun City seemed to be ordinary except for increasing the casualty rate. But in fact, the team maneuver, which used to be placed in the middle or at the end, had become the simplest and most brutal encirclement and suppression with the adjustment of the order. Li Tianlan was the target of everyone's encirclement and suppression. It could even be said that he was the only target. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai made it clear that they wanted to give Li Tianlan a little chance. Li Tianlan looked at Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan. Gu Xingyun did not look at him. But Gu Qianchuan's eyes were always on Li Tianlan. His eyes were ferocious and vicious, with awe-inspiring killing intent. Seeing Li Tianlan's gaze, Gu Qianchuan raised the corner of his mouth and showed a disdainful sneer. Li Tianlan lowered his head again and remained calm. Gu Xingyun smiled again. His injury was indeed very serious, and his breath was short and heavy. Even if he tried to hide it, he could not hide it perfectly. Li Tianlan glanced at him and lowered his head again. Some teams finally applied to give up this team maneuver for various reasons. I personally agreed with their abstention. So the team combat on the first day of the maneuver is probably everyone here and your team. Gu Xingyun took a deep breath and continued, this year's team maneuver is special. After careful consideration, Kunlun City decided to increase the casualty rate of this maneuver. But correspondingly, the credits obtained will also increase accordingly. The casualty rate will increase by 20%, and the credits will be increased by 50% according to the previous standard. Such a result is destined to make the competition between you very fierce. I'll ask you again formally. Is there anyone here who wants to withdraw from the maneuver? There was silence. In the silence, a clear voice sounded. I abstain. Huh? What? There was an uproar. Everyone turned to look at Dongqing Rushi, their eyes full of incredible emotions. Dongqing Rushi, Li Tianlan's fiancé, abstained? Did Li Tianlan fall out with the giant group? Gu Xingyun was also stunned, and he didn't even hide the surprise in his eyes. Dongqing Rushi's withdrawal meant that the giant group was less likely to intervene in this maneuver. He had no reason not to be surprised. Dongqing, are you sure? Gu Xingyun asked, trying to make his voice soft. Dongqing Rushi glanced at Gu Xingyun, nodded, stood up, and walked out directly. It seemed that she came here to announce the news. I abstain. Du Hanin also stood up and followed Dongqing Rushi out of the conference room. Everyone's brains were buzzing, and they couldn't fully understand what was going on for a while. Diagonally across from Li Tianlan, Wang Xingxiao narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Song Ci. Song Ci didn't look at Wang Xingxiao, just lowered her head. Wang Xingxiao's eyes were still gentle, but the light gradually became stern. In an absolute disadvantage, Li Tianlan didn't want to implicate his woman, so he sent Dongqing Rushi out of the maneuver. Wang Xingxiao had an absolute advantage. Why would he let his woman take the risk? He looked at Song Ci without blinking. Thus, while everyone was still in a state of shock, another unexpected voice rang out. I abstain. Song Ci gritted her teeth, and her voice was a little helpless. She glared at Wang Xingxiao. Wang Xingxiao smiled and touched Song Ci's hair. This was a man's war. Li Tianlan didn't want his woman to take the risk. As the heir of the Wang family of Beihai, he naturally had no reason to lose to Li Tianlan in this kind of courage. Everyone's eyes began to shift and finally fell on Gu Hanshan. This team maneuver was destined to be a life-and-death fight. Both Li Tianlan and Wang Xingxiao sent their women out of the maneuver to give them safety. What about Gu Hanshan? The muscles on Gu Hanshan's face twitched fiercely. He was expressionless and said nothing. Gu Yulan meant Gu Hanshan, so she also said nothing. In the silence, Li Tianlan and Wang Xingxiao's eyes seemed to meet for a moment, intentionally or unintentionally. Both of them saw a trace of mockery in each other's eyes. Anyone else wants to quit? Gu Xingyun asked. No one spoke. This time, everyone chose to stay. Gu Xingyun looked at Gu Hanshan, and an obscure light flashed in his eyes. His tone was still calm. Very well, since you accept the maneuver, I will introduce the rules. I will tell you the specific tasks of the maneuver the day before the maneuver. Everyone, although your competition is very fierce, I still hope that if possible, you will try to be merciful to your opponents, because they are not enemies. This is just a maneuver. From his standpoint, this was what he had to say for the sake of the situation. The sake of the situation was nonsense. It also included the so-called rules that Gu Xingyun explained. In fact, today, Gu Hanshan and Wang Xingxiao sat together, which was the most important practical content. The actual content didn't need to be said. It was already here. This was to put pressure on Li Tianlan, and it was also to strengthen the confidence of other young forces that followed the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. This was the real meaning. Li Tianlan quietly listened to Gu Xingyun's nonsense. He felt a little bored. The nonsense was unexpectedly long. The meeting started at 3:00, and Gu Xingyun talked until 4:30. No one had a problem with such maneuver rules. So Gu Xingyun announced the end of the meeting. The young elites who participated in the meeting left one after another. Before leaving, everyone glanced at Li Tianlan with meaningful eyes. Li Tianlan sat in his seat alone. He was truly a loner. He was surrounded by bone-chilling hostility from all directions. He suddenly smiled and glanced at Gu Xingyun again. Then he got up and was about to leave. Stop. A voice suddenly sounded behind him, calm and confident, almost like an order. Li Tianlan calmly turned around. "What's the matter?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. Gu Hanshan, who had never communicated with Li Tianlan, walked to Li Tianlan. He looked at Li Tianlan's eyes carefully. The two looked at each other. "What do you think is more important, survival or glory?" Gu Hanshan suddenly said, "If it were you, which one do you value most?" No one could think that Gu Hanshan's first sentence was to ask such a profound and simple question. Li Tianlan remained calm. He could feel that the eyes of the two invincible realm experts of Kunlun City were focused on him at this time. He suddenly smiled and said calmly, "The most important thing is the enemy. I think the master and the servant are the most important." There was a faint but extremely dangerous smile on Gu Hanshan's face. His face was ordinary, but at this time, it had an indescribable strength. "I'm willing to give you a chance. You be my dog, and I can give you the right to survive and the opportunity to gnaw on bones. How about that?" Gu Hanshan's tone was very generous and generous. "Don't be ungrateful." He whispered unhurriedly, "If you want to live, this is your last chance. If you don't want the face I'm giving you, I promise you will regret it." Only those who knew the past of the Li family and Kunlun City understood what Gu Hanshan meant. The Gu family had a long history. But more than 20 years ago, there was no special warfare group in Jianghu State. At that time, there were only 5 groups in Jianghu State. At that time, the Gu family was regarded by many as a running dog at the feet of the Li family, or a running dog of the Southeast group, which could not be shown in public. Gu Hanshan was undoubtedly proud. He didn't want to admit the dark history of the Gu family, but he wanted the heir of the Li family to crawl at his feet and be his dog. Wang Xingxiao heard this sentence. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He wanted to say something, but he forced himself to hold back. Let Li Tianlan be a dog? Perhaps in the whole dark world, only Gu Hanshan had this courage. Perhaps even Gu Xingyun didn't have this idea. Wang Xingxiao knew very well that even his father, Wang Tianzong, had tried to rope in Li Tianlan. As long as Li Tianlan agreed to join the Wang family of Beihai, in the future, Li Tianlan's weight in the territory of the Wang family of Beihai was no less than that of him, the heir of the Wang family of Beihai. This was not only sincerity, but also respect for Li Tianlan's potential. But now, Gu Hanshan asked Li Tianlan to be his dog. Such courage was really cute. Li Tianlan's expression did not change. He looked at Gu Hanshan and directly said what Wang Xingxiao wanted to say. "Are you an idiot?" He looked at Gu Hanshan and asked very seriously. "What did you say?" Gu Hanshan's face was cold. "I said you're an idiot." Li Tianlan chuckled. "Is the young master of Kunlun City that great? Do you really think you're a big shot? You're courting death by offending me like this." Gu Hanshan laughed gloomily, and his eyes were cold. "I really don't think you're a big shot." Li Tianlan said blandly, "In a dangerous situation, I will keep my woman away from danger, and Wang Xingxiao will also keep his woman away from danger. What about you?" He looked at Gu Yulan and said mockingly, "In a dangerous situation, in your eyes, your woman may just be a character who can create traps for the enemy. She hasn't recovered yet, right? Based on this alone, you're far inferior to me and Wang Xingxiao. When we climb the martial arts, we cultivate the sword energy and condense the sword intent. We're born as human beings with no breadth of mind and bearing. So what if you have 10 heavenly king hearts? You're just a useless person." Gu Hanshan's face did not change at all, but his tone became colder. Very good, very good." Li Tianlan smiled. What he said was actually the truth. When he entered the secular world 3 years ago, he valued Gu Hanshan, who had the heavenly king heart, because the other party's realm was much higher than his. But in terms of martial arts, he really didn't think much of the heir of Kunlun City. The Gu family used to be a low-key dog. After overthrowing the Li family, it became the war god clan of Jianghu State. Its rise and fall of honor and disgrace were straight up and down. In terms of foundation, it was a real upstart. Gu Hanshan's status was very high, but he didn't want to forget the shame of being a dog of the Li family, at least not far enough for him to forget. In such a state, he had the heavenly king heart, but there must be something wrong with his state of mind. In Li Tianlan's eyes, if he had to count his future opponents among the young generation of Zhongzhou state, even Jiang Shangyu ranked ahead of Gu Hanshan, not to mention Wang Xingxiao. It's not a good thing for young people to be arrogant. Gu Xingyun's voice suddenly sounded. He walked over slowly and looked at Li Tianlan with a faint smile. Tianlan, no one will doubt your potential. But potential is not equal to combat capability. I've seen many geniuses with amazing potential but died young. Li Tianlan said calmly, Your Highness is experienced and knowledgeable. No wonder you can cultivate such an excellent heir. I admire you. Gu Xingyun was not angry at all. His smile became more elegant and warm. Han is young and has many shortcomings, but it doesn't matter. But he's right about one thing. It's really important to know how to adapt to circumstances and appreciate favors. In this respect, you're not good enough. Do I have to be a dog for him if I do well? Li Tianlan laughed. He suddenly thought of something. I heard that a strong man once killed an invincible realm expert of Kunlun City for a dog. I don't know if it's true. Gu Xingyun's smile slowly faded. He looked at Li Tianlan and said expressionlessly, Tianlan, are you humiliating Kunlun City? I don't dare. Li Tianlan laughed. I just asked casually. I don't need you to remind me of anything in a strange way. Gu Xingyun said indifferently, the Gu family did live under someone else's roof, but it was just a necessary forbearance. The final winner was us. As for the Li family, no matter how glorious it was destroyed. He took a step closer to Li Tianlan and chuckled, but his voice was extremely cold. I can tell you clearly. As long as I'm alive, the Li family can't rise again. You don't want to be a dog? Very well, then be a nonentity for a lifetime. He paused, his voice getting lower and lower, and he chuckled. How is the old dog Li Honghe now? If Situ Tsangyue hadn't stopped me, your grandfather would have died long ago. But it doesn't matter. Last time I let him fall from the invincible realm, which is equivalent to knocking out his dog teeth. When I recover, I'll go to Lin and again and break his dog legs. It's not difficult to kill him. Li Tianlan looked at Gu Xingyun quietly. There was no anger, no panic. There was only pure emotion in his eyes. I won't let it go. He suddenly laughed. In front of Gu Xingyun, he bent down and took off his shoes and socks. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.